Chapter 43-35. In the Rising Sun Forbidden Land, the 8 sovereigns, including the 2 Ninth Order sovereigns, had all tried to subdue the Netherworld Furnace, but without exception, they all failed. This showed that the Netherworld Furnace's current battle strength had at least reached the Emperor realm. Of course, the Netherworld Furnace's power was originally extraordinary. Even when it was still in the origin of all evil star field, it could easily crush the remains of the primordial supreme sovereigns. It even escaped into an unknown void crack to collect the remains of the primordial supreme sovereigns. It even entered a void crack to retrieve a large number of remains of primordial creatures. As a primordial supreme treasure like the Shinnon Cauldron, it was originally very difficult to subdue. The 8 sovereigns of the Rising Sun Forbidden Land could not subdue it, but it did not mean that its true battle strength had reached the Emperor realm. The reason why Yi Xian came to this conclusion was because the 8 ferocious beast emperors of the Rising Forbidden Area weren't just trying to capture it. One of the half-step titled emperors had even fought a great battle with the Netherworld Furnace in a fit of anger. The final result was that this half-step emperor was defeated. So, naturally, they could make a rough assessment of the Netherworld Furnace's battle strength. Moreover, the strength of the Emperor realm was only a conservative estimate of the lower limit. It could be even stronger. With this kind of powerful battle strength and its grade as a primordial supreme treasure, the Netherworld Furnace could completely do whatever it wanted in the Rising Sun Forbidden Land. In the entire Rising Sun Forbidden Land, all the fierce beasts in the Rising Sun Forbidden Land could not do anything to it. However, even though the Netherworld Furnace possessed a powerful battle prowess that allowed it to run amok in the Forbidden Land of Rising Sun, it did not go on a killing spree here, nor did it leave. All day long, it was as if it was just strolling around, one moment flying here, the next moment flying there, and the next moment flying there. It was an extremely strange feeling. Initially, because of its arrival and its terrifying battle prowess that even half-step titled emperors couldn't do anything to, the beasts in the Forbidden Land of Rising Sun were terrified. However, as time passed, the beasts in the Forbidden Land of Rising Sun discovered that although its battle prowess was strong, it seemed to be natural. After seeing that it was harmless, the fear that had just sprouted gradually faded away. Now, 2 years had passed, and the countless ferocious beasts in the Forbidden Land of the Rising Sun seemed to have gotten used to the existence of the Netherworld Furnace. Even if the Netherworld Furnace shot past them in the void, they would not feel too much fear. Uneasy. Such a scene, if not for the information obtained through the soul search, there was no possibility of falsification. Yi Xian almost did not dare to believe it. There must be a conspiracy. After pondering for a while, a cold light flashed through Yi Xian's eyes as he muttered to himself, however, if we want to find out the inside story of this matter, it's already unrealistic to rely solely on soul searching. Even the strongest experts in the Forbidden Land of Rising Sun are only those 2 half-step emperors. I'm afraid that he wouldn't know the true purpose of the Netherworld Furnace. At most, he would only be able to see some clues. The only way is to sneak into the Forbidden Land of Rising Sun, lay low, and secretly observe the movements of the Netherworld Furnace. From there, you can find traces and deduce and analyze. Only then will you be able to obtain an answer. If he wanted to sneak into the Rising Sun Forbidden Land, and it was very likely that he would have to hide for a long time, with Yi Xian's current strength at the peak of the 9th stage titled Emperor, it was obviously unrealistic. In the entire Rising Sun Forbidden Land, there were only 60 or so existences above the Emperor-conferred realm, and only the dozen or so half-step Emperor-conferred realm cultivators who resided in the central starfield were existences with high status and authority. In the Rising Sun Forbidden Land, everyone knew about Yi Xian. If a new face like him suddenly appeared, he would be exposed immediately. However, if his strength was too weak, it would be extremely inconvenient. After pondering for a while, he decided to hide his strength at the level of Marquis Undying, and at the first stage of Marquis Undying. In the entire 5 starfields of the Rising Sun Forbidden Land, there were about 600 Marquis Undying, and Yi Xian deliberately hid his strength at the first stage of Marquis Undying. This was very likely because he had just broken through from the peak of the 9th stage Undying, so his concealment was higher. It was foolproof. After making the decision, Yi Xian didn't hesitate anymore. He immediately hid his strength at the first stage of Marquis Undying, but his body still maintained the appearance of a space-violent ape. In this vast rising sun forbidden land, there was also a space-violent ape with a space-violent ape. In this vast space, there was no need to choose another space-violent ape bloodline. After everything was ready, Yi Xian immediately rushed out of the abandoned star where he was hiding. His speed wasn't fast or slow, roughly the same as some of the Forbidden Land's fierce beasts that occasionally appeared around him. He was very sure that he was heading towards the rising sun Forbidden Land in front of him. The area he entered was the southern star region of the 5 great star regions of the rising sun Forbidden area. Therefore, after entering, Yi Xian didn't stop at all and sped north. Because the netherworld furnace was now active in the central starfield, which was surrounded by the 4 peripheral starfields, Yi Xian took the risk to enter the rising sun Forbidden Land to investigate the netherworld furnace's movements and schemes. This was something that he had to get close to before he could realize. The rising sun Forbidden Land was indeed worthy of being the only large-scale forbidden land in the vast space within a radius of 1 trillion miles. Previously, Yi Xian didn't have a deep impression of it when he was far away in the periphery, but now that he entered the southern starfield, what he saw was different. The scene was immediately different. The southern star region alone was larger than the forbidden land of the behemoth. There were innumerable planets within, and there were more than 1,000 living planets, with more than 10 feral kings guarding them. Looking around, there were all kinds of fierce beasts of different levels of cultivation in the space. It was very lively. As such, Yi Xian rushed all the way to the north in this area and didn't stand out so much. Anyway, there were fierce beasts of the Forbidden Land everywhere in the space, so no one would deliberately lock onto him and pay attention to him. At this speed, Yi Xian took more than 10 days to cross the entire vast southern starfield and enter the central starfield, which was surrounded by the 4 major starfields. This indeed wasted a lot of time, but it couldn't be helped. After all, he had already entered the rising sun Forbidden Land. If his strength was too strong and his speed was too fast, it would definitely attract unnecessary attention, and it was very likely that his identity would be exposed. Everything was based on safety. After entering the central star region, Yi Xian wasn't in a hurry to travel. He hunted an ordinary undying at the edge of the area and confirmed the approximate location of the recent appearance of the netherworld furnace. After that, he continued on his way and headed straight for the target area. Although the central starfield wasn't as vast as the 4 major starfields surrounding it, it wasn't too far off. Moreover, because the 8 great emperors in the rising sun Forbidden Land were all guarding it, there were also 10 half-emperors, so Yi Xian didn't have to worry about it. Chapter 43-36. At this moment, a familiar system notification sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host. A dangerous star field has been discovered. Appraisal result, void vortex. Danger source, unknown. Danger factor, unknown. Do you wish to explore immediately? Hint, if the exploration is successful, there is a chance of upgrading the system title. System current title, Level 5, Interstellar Raider. System next title, Level 4, Interstellar Controller. Interstellar Controller, this title comes with a halo effect. On the basis of the previous 5 titles, Interstellar Traveler, Interstellar Adventurer, Interstellar Explorer, Interstellar Pathfinder, and Interstellar Raider, a new system ability will be added. Activated. At the same time, the number of interstellar coordinates imprinted on any universe plane will increase from the previous 2 to 3. Ding! System explanation complete. Do you wish to begin the exploration immediately? He had not even seen the netherworld furnace, but he had already encountered a system exploration mission that had suddenly appeared. As the system notification in his mind ended, Yi Xian immediately fell into deep thought. His eyebrows were tightly knitted, and his eyes flickered endlessly. Speaking of which, the system exploration mission had not appeared for a long time. This sudden appearance was indeed good news for Yi Xian, but at the same time, he was deeply worried, which was why he was so hesitant at this moment. Fixed. The previous Level 5 system title, which was the Interstellar Raider title, had not only added a new system ability on the basis of the original Level 4 title, but also helped Yi Xian forge the 4 great warriors later on. System. At the same time, the number of interstellar coordinates imprinted on any universe plane increased from the initial 1 to 2. Moreover, when the system title was successfully upgraded to level 5, Yi Xian's mental powers, secret techniques and magical powers, as well as the various bloodlines in his body, had also improved to a certain extent. It could be said that the benefits he had obtained were enormous. However, the reason he could obtain these benefits was because of the final success of the 5th system exploration mission. However, if the system exploration mission had failed that time, Yi Xian would have faced a very severe punishment. That was, the system title would directly be downgraded by 1 level, and the corresponding title ability and benefits would automatically disappear. The previous 5th system title exploration mission had already been so severe. Now that the system exploration mission had suddenly appeared, the punishment would definitely be even more severe if he failed. At least, it would not be lighter than the previous time. In other words, if the system exploration mission failed this time, Yi Xian's current level 5 title would very likely be directly downgraded by 1 level, from the current Interstellar Raider to the previous level 4 title, which was Interstellar Pathfinder. At the same time, he would lose the corresponding abilities and various benefits of the level 5 Interstellar Raider. At that time, the forging system that had been activated would be shut down again. The original benefit of being able to imprint 2 interstellar coordinate jump points in any universe would also revert to being able to imprint only 1. Including the bloodlines, secret arts, and divine abilities after the successful exploration last time, the level of all kinds of bloodlines, secret arts, and divine abilities would all be reduced. This price was simply too great and unbearable. Therefore, Yi Xian had no choice but to consider it carefully. However, although the risk was high, if the system exploration mission was successful, the benefits would also be many. Putting aside the fact that a new system ability was about to be activated, just the fact that each of the existing universes could only imprint 2 interstellar coordinate jump points was enough to cause Yi Xian's heart to be moved by the fact that there were 3 of them in each of the existing universes. This void fragment of the universe was indeed too vast. Even with the terrifying cultivation of emperors and thear-cranked martial artists, they still felt that it was vast and boundless. Yi Xian had already imprinted 1 interstellar coordinate jump point in this void fragment of the universe, which was the Sangji star sector that he had first arrived at. Now, he could only imprint 1 interstellar coordinate jump point in this void fragment of the universe. It was indeed a little insufficient. If he could add 1 more, it would be of great significance. Furthermore, with the success of the system exploration mission, Yi Xian's various bloodlines, as well as the various secret techniques and abilities that he had mastered, would definitely be upgraded again, just like the previous time. All in all, although the risk was high, the benefits were even greater. As a strong martial artist in the starry skies, he had to be courageous and brave in front of him. If he was timid and uncertain, how could he move forward? There was not much time left. The reappearance of the netherworld furnace and its strange behavior indicated that it was up to something. Basically, it was an established fact that the chaos world was descending and was getting closer and closer. When that time came, it would be a real catastrophe. Even if Yi Xian had the battle strength of an emperor, he might not be able to survive, let alone the many friends and subordinates that he cared about. Now that there was no way back, the only choice in the face of any danger was to cut off all means of retreat and move forward. At this thought, Yi Xian no longer hesitated and immediately sent an affirmative reply to accept the system's title exploration mission. In his mind, the familiar system prompt sounded. Ding! Congratulations, host. Successfully activated the system's title exploration mission. If the exploration is successful, there is a certain chance of upgrading the system's title. System's current title, Level 5, Interstellar Raider. System's next title, Level 5, Interstellar Controller. Galactic Controller, this title comes with a halo effect. On the basis of the previous 5 titles, Galactic Traveler, Galactic Adventurer, Galactic Explorer, Galactic Pathfinder, and Galactic Raider, a brand new system ability will be added. Activated. At the same time, the number of interstellar coordinates imprinted on any universe plane will increase from the previous 2 to 3. System's requirements for completing the exploration mission, pending, activated after entering the star vortex. Punishment for failure of the exploration mission. System's title will be downgraded by 1 level. As expected. Once this exploration mission failed, the existing 5th level title would automatically be downgraded by 1 level, directly returning to the previous 4th level of the Interstellar Pathfinder. Although he had already realized this, Yi Xian's heart couldn't help but tremble when he suddenly heard that this punishment would become a reality. He immediately shook his head helplessly and smiled bitterly. However, Yi Xian had already accepted the system's exploration mission that suddenly appeared this time, but he did not immediately start the exploration. After all, the system prompt did not give a time limit for the exploration. Of course, this matter could not be delayed. It was too long, otherwise, other unforeseen events would inevitably occur. After pondering for a while, Yi Xian immediately returned along the original path and quietly left the forbidden rising land. He only stopped when he was 1 billion miles away from the edge of the forbidden rising land. His figure flashed and swept toward a nearby abandoned star. Chapter 43-37. After 1 billion miles away from the rising sun forbidden zone, Yi Xian entered an abandoned planet. He waved his hand and took out the farmer god cauldron. As he extended his spirit sense into the cauldron, he found that green cow wasn't in closed-door cultivation. It seemed to have just broken through a small level and was preparing for the next one. Xiao. As he thought about it, a weak sound of breaking through the air sounded out. The green ox, which was originally inside the Shinong cauldron, was directly kicked out by Yi Xian. As soon as his figure appeared, he was still a little confused about the situation. He looked left and right with a bewildered expression. It snorted. He walked over and asked, "Boss, what's the matter? Why did you suddenly kick me out? I just broke through to Emperor Level 2 and was preparing to continue my closed-door cultivation." "Don't worry about closed-door cultivation. When we return to the Phoenix Blood Forbidden Zone, there'll be plenty of time for you to do it." Yi Xian waved his hand and interrupted Green Cow. His expression turned serious as he continued, "I encountered something in the Rising Sun Forbidden Zone. It's very likely that I won't be able to return in a short period of time. However, the strength of the Space Nomadic Army in the Phoenix Blood Forbidden Zone can't be delayed. Hence, I need you to bring back some level of treasure pills. When we return, you'll be in charge of the entire Phoenix Blood Forbidden Zone temporarily. Luckily, even if I'm not here, there's a total of 6 kings in the Forbidden Zone, including you. Even though they're all in the initial stage, there's no strong medium space Forbidden Zone within 100 billion miles. You'll be fine." After he finished speaking, Yi Xian directly waved his hand and shot a few storage bottles towards the green ox. Inside were level 20 to level 23 treasure pills. Yi Xian had more than 5,000 level 20 treasure pills for breaking through to Undying. This time, he gave Green Cow a total of 2,000. He had more than 500 level 21 treasure pills for breaking through to official level Undying. He gave 200 of them. He had 38 level 22 treasure pills for breaking through to Emperor level Undying. This time, he gave 20 of them. Yi Xian only had 4 level 23 pellets to break through to the Undying Emperor level, but he only had 2 of them, so he only had 2. The value of this batch of pills was simply immeasurable. Even the 2 Ninth Order peerless sovereigns in the forbidden land of Rising Sun would be shocked if they were to take a look at it. But now, they were all stored in storage bottles, and they were casually tossed to the green ox. The old man obviously didn't expect Yi Xian's first move to be so terrifying. After receiving the 4 storage bottles, he checked them with his spirit sense. He was so scared that his hooves trembled, and he almost dropped the 4 bottles. "Boss, there are so many precious pills, and there are actually 2 Emperor-bestowed pills. You just casually gave them to me." After staring blankly at Yi Xian for a few moments, the old fellow's face was about to turn red. "Aren't you afraid that this old ox will take them and run away? With this batch of resources, you can run to a place where you can't find them. In time, you'll be able to create a large-scale forbidden space. If you want to run, then run. Anyway, I've already given you 1 Emperor's treasure pill before. Even if you don't count the 2 pills I gave you this time, you still have 1. You probably won't need the Emperor's treasure pill in the near future. Yi Xian indifferently shrugged his shoulders. He rolled his eyes and said, "It's even better if you run away. This time, this king will go and collect the materials. When the time comes, I'll be able to save one of the Emperor's sealing pellets that I refine." Emperor-level treasure pill? Slurp. Hearing this, Green Cow's swollen eyes turned red. Saliva was already dripping from the corner of his mouth, but it was sucked back in by him. This old fellow hadn't even used the level 23 Emperor's treasure pill that he had just obtained not long ago. When he heard about the Emperor's treasure pill, he actually started thinking about it again. His face was full of smiles as he immediately swung his hooves and rushed to Yi Xian's side. He rubbed his hind legs against the space-violent ape. "Boss, what are you saying? Is this old cow that kind of cow?" "Don't worry, the mission boss gave me will definitely be completed perfectly." "Oh right, boss, are you going to collect the materials to refine the Emperor-level treasure pill this time?" "This is a big matter, we must not delay, hurry up and leave. This old cow will send this batch of treasure pills back to the Phoenix Blood Star region as soon as possible. Stay there and wait for you to refine the Emperor-level treasure. Bring the pill back when it's done, moo." As soon as he finished speaking, the old fellow seemed as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He raised his head and let out a long howl in excitement. He didn't stay any longer. He raised his 4 hooves, and in the blink of an eye, he was already far away in the direction of Phoenix Blood Star region. The most dangerous place along the way was the Behemoth Forbidden Land, but now, the Behemoth Forbidden Land had already become history. With the Green Cow's second stage Emperor cultivation, it was impossible for it to be in any danger. Therefore, Yi Xian was not worried at all. Seeing him leave, he did not hesitate and turned around to rush towards the rising sun Forbidden Land that was 1 billion miles away. After spending a few more days, Yi Xian successfully returned to the star region where he had triggered the system title mission. Along the way, he still did not see the netherworld furnace, which made him feel uneasy, but there was nothing he could do. Although the main purpose of coming to the rising sun Forbidden Land this time was to investigate the whereabouts of the netherworld furnace, but now, although he did not see the netherworld furnace, he unexpectedly triggered a system title mission. As such, Yi Xian could only temporarily put the matter of the netherworld furnace aside. After that, he decided to complete the system title mission that had been triggered first. Otherwise, if he stayed in the rising sun Forbidden Land for too long, the system title mission that had been triggered had passed the time limit, and automatically judged that Yi Xian had failed to complete the mission. That would be a big waste. These thoughts flashed through his mind. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled bitterly. He completely put the matter of the netherworld furnace aside and no longer thought about it. Then, he turned his head and glanced at a remote void on his right. There were only a few dozen abandoned stars in that void that had long since lost their light and heat. In an inconspicuous corner behind 2 abandoned stars, there was a void crack that was only a few hundred meters wide. Because this kind of void crack could be encountered from time to time in the void, and because the one on the back of the 2 abandoned stars didn't emit too much energy, it was very inconspicuous. If it were not for the system prompt that the system title mission this time was to enter this so-called star vortex to complete, Yi Xian would not have paid any attention to it. Such a small and ordinary void crack is actually called a star vortex by the system. This really makes me speechless. After staring at this void crack for a long time, Yi Xian could not see any clues. However, the system would not be wrong. He was very sure of this. Everything in the past had already proved it. Muttering softly, Yi Xian did not hesitate anymore. His figure flashed and directly rushed into this void crack. In the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared completely. Almost at the same moment that he entered this void crack, the familiar system prompt sounded in Yi Xian's mind. The system did not specify the specific content of the system title mission before, saying that he had to wait until he entered the star vortex. Chapter 43-38. As Yi Xian resolutely entered the so-called star vortex designated by the system, the familiar system notification sounded in his mind again. Ding! Congratulations to the host. successfully activated the system title exploration mission. If the exploration is successful, there is a chance of upgrading the system title. System current title, Level 5, Interstellar Raider. System next title, Level 6, Interstellar Controller. Interstellar Controller, this title comes with a halo effect. On the basis of the previous 5 levels of titles, Interstellar Traveler, Interstellar Adventurer, Interstellar Explorer, Interstellar Pathfinder, and Interstellar Raider, a brand new system ability will be added. Activated. At the same time, the number of interstellar coordinates imprinted on any universe plane will increase from the previous 2 to 3. System mission exploration mission requirements: find a nest of chaos sources, enter it, split a strand of your primordial spirit, and use the doppelganger system to refine it into a primordial spirit seed. Plant it in the nest of chaos sources and begin the path to the birth of a chaos demon god. Punishment for exploration mission failure: the system title will be downgraded by 1 level. Boom! As the system notification sounded this time, Yi Xian's mind instantly exploded with a roar. He was completely stunned and his eyes widened as if he had just been struck by lightning. Chaos demon god? It actually asked him to split a strand of his primordial spirit, use the doppelganger system to refine it into a primordial spirit seed, and plant it in the nest of chaos sources to begin the path to the birth of a chaos demon god? What kind of joke was this? This was simply too frightening. Yi Xian naturally understood the literal meaning of the system's requirements. It could even be said that there was no difficulty in implementing it at all. His devouring doppelganger was condensed from the doppelganger system attached to the system. However, it was obviously different this time. Although it was essentially refining a doppelganger, this doppelganger's level was too high and its background was too great. Although he did not know what this nest of chaos sources was, if he thought about the chaos demon god, he could basically conclude that it should be the core of a certain special star. Moreover, there was clearly more than one nest of chaos sources, which was consistent with the legends. According to the legends, there were a total of 3,000 great paths in the world, each of which could prove the great path. The 3,000 chaos demon gods were innate gods born from the 3,000 laws of the great paths. Each chaos demon god had a kind of law. In other words, chaos demon gods were born from the great paths. Even the legendary Pangu, who created the world and started the primeval age, seemed to be one of the 3,000 chaos fiend gods. In other words, these so-called 3,000 chaos demon gods were actually born before the start of the Great Desolate Era. Now that Yi Xian had suddenly encountered such a system title quest, it actually allowed him to find a nest of chaos in this mysterious void. Furthermore, he had placed a strand of his nascent soul seed into it and used it to nurture a chaos demon god. This undoubtedly proved that the primordial world was indeed coming. They were chaos fiend gods, existences at the same level as Pangu, who created the world and started the primeval age. If he could really get a share of the pie from the 3,000 chaos fiend gods and refine one of them into his fiend god incarnation, he would be able to do so. At that time, Yi Xian would be so powerful that even the primeval age's heavenly Tao might not be able to match him. This sounds too inconceivable, but now that the system's title quest has been activated, no matter what, there's no way out. No matter what, let's try to find this so-called nest of chaos first. After a wave of emotions, Yi Xian gradually calmed down. His eyes flickered with a bright light as he quickly made a decision. As for whether or not to split a strand of his primordial spirit and enter that place as requested by the system, he will occupy the nest and occupy 3,000. Refining one of the chaos fiend gods into my fiend god incarnation is a matter for the future. Once I find the chaos nest, I'll decide based on the situation. However, it would not be easy to find this so-called chaos nest. Even if there were 3,000 similar places, Yi Xian only needed to find one. After all, this was a 6th-level title quest. How could it not be difficult? It would be strange if it could be completed easily. With this thought in mind, Yi Xian subconsciously looked around. Just now, when he first entered this place from the star vortex, the specific details of this 6th-level title quest immediately rang in his mind, attracting Yi Xian's attention. Therefore, he did not pay attention to his surroundings. At this moment, when he looked around, half of his heart immediately turned cold. After entering this place, Yi Xian no longer deliberately concealed and suppressed his cultivation base. He had returned to the regal immortal realm. However, now, even as he extended his powerful regal immortal realm consciousness to its limit, he still could not find anything. Even if it was a small abandoned planet. This void was pitch black, with nothing at all. Not to mention a single abandoned star, not even a speck of cosmic dust could be found. Not to mention that the void crack that entered this place was so small that no one would pay special attention to it. Even if some forbidden area's fierce beasts entered this place, it was estimated that after casually walking around, they would immediately leave without hesitation. It was simply. There was no value, however the system notification wouldn't be wrong. What's more, in such a vast universe space, there was nothing at all. Even an emperor's powerful spirit sense wouldn't be able to sense anything, not even a small abandoned star. However, it was only a matter of time before the system notification would be wrong. Just this point alone was extremely abnormal. This was enough to prove that there was something strange about this place. Thinking about this, Yi Xian immediately became spirited. As long as the system's title quest wasn't wrong, then there was nothing to worry about. Back then, before he entered the void of the great desolate world fragment, Yi Xian had been wandering alone in that dark void for several years. At most, he would just have to revise that feeling again. After adjusting his state of mind, he did not hesitate anymore. He immediately raised his head and roared, directly activating the bloodline ability of the Nine Devil Ape transformation. Nine Devil Ape transformation, 6th transformation. As the furious roar sounded out, the power within Yi Xian's body instantly surged like a raging river. His limbs and bones surged with an endless amount of ruthlessness, and a terrifying blood and chi energy that caused one's hair to stand on end gushed out from his body. In the blink of an eye, his body, which was originally only 30 meters tall, rapidly expanded like a balloon that was being blown up at an extremely fast speed. In less than 3 breaths, he had already reached a height of 10 million meters, like a human-shaped star. Moreover, at the same time that the violent ape's body expanded, the cultivation aura that was emitted from its body also expanded. When the enormous 6th transformation appeared, the cultivation aura that was emitted from the violent ape's body had shockingly reached the terrifying level of the Emperor. 6th level decay. Chapter 43-39. Whoosh. A sharp piercing sound rang out as a ray of light shot past. It was extremely dazzling in this empty void. However, it was so fast that it disappeared from sight in the blink of an eye. This light that was like an arrow was Yi Xian. Currently, he was in the 6th transformation of the 9 transformations of the demonic ape. The cultivation aura emanating from his body had reached the 6th stage of the Emperor Immortal Realm. His speed was so fast that it was simply shocking. Even so, Yi Xian maintained this extreme speed and fixed on a fixed direction. From time to time, he would use all his strength to teleport. However, a month had passed, and he still hadn't found anything in this empty dark void. As a peak mid-stage Emperor Immortal, the distance that he had left behind in the starry sky had exceeded the distance between the Forbidden Land of the beaming Forbidden Land and the Forbidden Land of the rising sun. However, along the way, Yi Xian became more and more disappointed. During this month, he hadn't even seen a speck of cosmic dust on this abandoned star. It was as if this was an endless empty void, an eternal slumber in the darkness. After another 2 days, just as he was getting more and more impatient, a star finally appeared in front of him at the end of the void in front of him. This star was huge, surpassing the largest giant star Yi Xian had ever seen. Although it didn't have an atmosphere, and the surface of the star seemed to be full of rock formations, there wasn't a single trace of vegetation or even water. However, Yi Xian was able to discern something. From the interior of this star, he clearly captured a wisp of faint life aura. After flying in this empty void for a month, suddenly seeing a star was already extremely delightful. However, this star actually had a faint life aura, which was very likely what he was looking for. The so-called nest of chaos origins. Thinking of this, Yi Xian was so excited that he almost raised his head and laughed. Just as he was about to burst out at full speed and fly closer to this star to examine it carefully, a familiar throbbing suddenly came from somewhere in front of his left chest. Yi Xian was stunned. Then, he subconsciously lowered his head to look at his left chest. With a single glance, he didn't discover anything. Only then did he remember that he was now a colossal monster. The headless infant corpse's corpse had transformed into a corpse lamp imprint on his left chest that was only the size of 2 fingers. Under such a huge body, it was as if it would be strange if he could see it. Without any hesitation, Yi Xian dispelled the 9 transformations of the demonic ape 9 transformations. He even released himself from the ancient demonic ape true body state and returned to his human form. Therefore, his cultivation base dropped rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he had dropped to the 8th level of Emperor. As his cultivation base dropped, the giant star in front of him disappeared instantly because it was too far away. It had already exceeded the limit of what an Emperor's spirit sense could reach. But it didn't matter. Even if he couldn't detect it, the star was still in the same place. He couldn't run away. He could reach it in 2 days at most. And now, Yi Xian was most concerned about the throbbing of the corpse lamp tattoo on his chest. This most likely meant that the headless infant corpse that had been in a deep slumber had awakened again. This was definitely good news. Thinking back, the headless infant corpse had been in a deep slumber for almost 10 years. Now that it had suddenly awakened, there was bound to be a surprise. This was Yi Xian's intuition, and it made him very excited. At this moment, as he returned to his human form, the corpse tattoo on his chest appeared again. It was clearly emitting a blazing light, and an extremely mysterious aura spread out from it. Before Yi Xian could react, the corpse lamp tattoo on his chest became extremely hot. Then, with a flash of light, the corpse lamp tattoo on the left side of Yi Xian's chest disappeared. A figure appeared in the void 1,000 feet in front of him. It was a nascent soul. It was a headless infant corpse the size of a child, with blood tattoos all over its body. It was headless, but it was carrying a baby's head in its arms. Damn, you're finally awake. Do you know how many years you've been sleeping? Seeing that the headless infant corpse had indeed awakened, and this time, it seemed to be taking the initiative to appear directly in front of him, Yi Xian was wild with joy. He asked on the spot, also, what is your current level of cultivation? Was the truth of the primordial war as the Black Ox said? That you were a man-made heavenly Tao created by those primordial beings known as demons? This is, the Hong Meng Void, 1,000 feet in front of him. The headless infant corpse that had suddenly awakened didn't care about Yi Xian at all. It didn't seem to have the slightest intention of responding to his barrage of questions. At this moment, the eyes of the baby's head in its arms had already opened. 2 rays of blood-red light shot out, but it didn't look at Yi Xian. Instead, it followed the body of the headless infant corpse that was carrying the head and scanned the surrounding dark void. Wait. Although the baby's head's mouth did not move, an extremely young voice suddenly sounded in the void. However, the voice sounded old and even old. You are indeed a living being with the destiny of the primordial world. You are actually really a living being with the destiny of the primordial world. You actually found this place. The you here was obviously referring to Yi Xian. Although the headless infant corpse spoke without rhyme or reason, Yi Xian still heard some information from it. From his words, in the void of the ancient cage fragment that was connected to the Forbidden Valley of the Devil Emperor planet, the headless infant corpse was certain that Yi Xian was brought out by him. There was a reason why it hadn't left after that. There was indeed a reason. And this reason was that as early as that time, the headless infant corpse had used some unknown method to see that Yi Xian was a creature with the aura of the primordial world. He might have relied on this to determine that Yi Xian would definitely find this so-called primordial void in the future, so he had been clinging to Yi Xian and refused to leave. Right now, there might be an incomprehensible force that made Yi Xian unexpectedly come to this primordial void. Therefore, the headless infant corpse that had been sleeping with a corpse lamp tattoo on his left chest had been sensing the unique aura of the primordial world. After sensing the unique aura of the primordial void, it began to struggle free from its slumber. Now, it had completely awakened. These thoughts flashed through Yi Xian's mind. He was stunned for a moment, and then his face turned pale. He immediately became nervous. I say, big brother, don't tell me you want to run away alone after achieving your goal? If that's the case, then it's too unkind. For you, this Star Lord has offended primeval heaven's eye. You can run away casually, but this Star Lord has a family. You can run away, but you can't run away from the temple. Chapter 43-40. 8th Stage Regal Immortal. The speed of cultivation strength advancement is barely passable, but it's still too weak. As Yi Xian's slightly anxious voice sounded, the bloody eyes of the baby head in the headless baby corpse's arms finally moved slowly and finally landed on Yi Xian, locking onto him. After sizing him up a few times, that extremely strange, tender, and ancient voice sounded again at this moment. However, since you have the primordial providence, then one of the 3,000 chaos demon gods must belong to you. Although it's a little weak now, once the natal demon god awakens in the future, your cultivation strength will skyrocket. You will be qualified to participate in the final battle. F***CK. So this is what the so-called primordial providence is referring to? Upon hearing this, Yi Xian's eyes widened on the spot, and he gasped. Previously, when he accepted the system's title quest, the headless infant's corpse hadn't woken up yet, so he most likely didn't know the specific mission of the system's title quest. It was to let Yi Xian find a nest of primal chaos and split off a strand of his primordial spirit to enter it. Occupy one of the 3,000 chaos demon gods and refine it into one of his doppelgangers. However, at this moment, the headless baby corpse still said something similar. This was definitely not a coincidence. The only explanation was that the so-called primordial providence that the headless baby corpse had mentioned earlier was, in fact, to occupy a seat among the chaos demon gods. Furthermore, from what he had just said, there was definitely going to be a final battle between the headless infant corpse and the primordial heavenly Tao. This battle was in fact a continuation of the primordial war that had destroyed the entire primordial world. The battle back then was so tragic that the entire untainted land world was shattered, and both sides suffered countless casualties. Even the void tortoise, the golden divine dragon, and the desolate ancient Yiksha, who were supreme existences of the remote antiquity, were seriously injured and died. They had died. But in fact, the leaders of the two sides in that battle, namely the headless baby corpse and the primeval heaven's eye, had not died. Now, after countless years of dormancy and recovery, the headless infant corpse and the primordial green eye of the heavenly Tao had both awakened. So, as the final result of that incomparable battle in the primordial era, this final battle after countless years, was destined. It was coming. Perhaps, the day when the primordial world fully descended would be the moment this battle officially began. If that was really the case, Yi Xian obviously did not have much time. The activities of the netherworld furnace were getting more and more frequent and strange, which made him feel a heavy sense of urgency. Although the headless baby corpse said that once he refined one of the 3,000 chaos demon gods into his doppelganger, once the chaos demon god that had been refined into his doppelganger awakened, Yi Xian's cultivation strength would instantly skyrocket, and it was very likely even paragons of the primordial era such as the void tortoise, the golden divine dragon, and the primordial Yiksha were qualified to participate in the final battle. But, who knew how long it would take for a chaos demon god to be born? It was obvious that this time would not be short. Yi Xian was afraid that before he could wait until then, the primeval heavens I would suddenly activate, causing the primordial world that had long collapsed to completely descend into this world. Thinking of this, Yi Xian could not sit still. He was not in the mood to pay attention to the headless baby corpse in front of him, who was always talking to him. With a flash of his body, he flew in the direction of the giant star that he had just probed and shot forward at an extremely fast speed. Although he was not in a hurry, in his opinion, the birth of the chaos demon god was not something that could be completed in a short period of time. Besides, there was still a system title mission pressing down on his head. As long as he entered the core of the giant star in front of him, found the so-called nest of chaos, and split out a strand of his primordial spirit, he would enter that place and occupy the nest. One of the 3,000 chaos demon gods would be refined into his doppelganger. Then, no matter when this chaos demon god that had been refined into a doppelganger would wake up, whether it could wake up before the primordial world completely descended into this world. At least for now, Yi Xian's sixth system title mission could finally be completed. It was done. This was a real benefit. How could he miss it just like that? The star in front of us is indeed a nest of primal chaos. In the depths of its core, there is a chaos demon god being nurtured. As Yi Xian's figure shot out, the headless corpse behind him spoke in a tender and aged voice once again. However, the aura of this nest of primal chaos is too weak. The chaos demon god that is born is destined not to be able to survive. Too powerful, and not suitable for you at all. There should be 3,000 similar nests of chaos in the primordial void. What you need is the most powerful nest. It's said that in the distant past, before the primordial age had even begun, a chaos lotus grew in an unknown place in the primordial void. The chaos lotus continuously absorbed chaos chi from its surroundings, gradually forming a giant storm of chi that flashed with dazzling light from time to time. In the end, the lotus exploded, and 3,000 streaks of light shot out, transforming into 3,000 stars. At the core of each star was a nest of chaos that nurtured a chaos life form, the so-called chaos demon gods. However, there were differences in strength between the 3,000 nests of chaos, and the chaos demon gods that were nurtured represented different laws of the Great Tao. There are 3,000 laws in the chaos, which are also known as the 3,000 Great Taos. Among them, the masters of the top 10 laws are all extremely powerful existences. The top 10 laws are the laws of strength, the laws of time, the laws of space. The laws of chaos, the laws of immortal Tao, the laws of demon Tao, the laws of life, the laws of the 5 elements, the laws of yin and yang, and the laws of destruction. Back then, demon god Pangu, who created the world in the primordial void and ushered in the primordial age, walked out of the number 1 nest of chaos. He mastered the number 1 law of the top 10, the supreme law of the primordial age. It was the law of strength. Once the law of strength is mastered, it can create a new world and reach the Great Tao. Crimson light flashed in the headless baby corpse's eyes as it scanned Yi Xian from head to toe. You're different from me. I belong to the primordial age and am branded with the aura of the primordial age. I can't change my fate in the primordial age. Chapter 43-41. The Law of Strength? You want me to be Pangu? Yi Xian was shocked. He hurriedly waved his hands. There's no room for discussion. What's so good about creating a new world? Pangu didn't have a good ending. In the end, he sacrificed himself. That's just something that happened in the previous primordial era. The infant corpse shook his head. A look of disdain appeared on his face. Every primordial era is different. The will of the Great Tao and I are already in the past. Now, he's only struggling to steal the primordial luck of this primordial era, but all of this is destined to be futile. Fu Gong, you have a wisp of primordial luck. This new primordial luck of this primordial era is destined to be written by you. In the previous primordial era, it was Pangu who obtained the law of strength. Why can't it be you, Yi Xian, in this primordial era? Pangu chose to create a new world and start the Great Tao, but your choice is up to you. The prerequisite is that you have to have enough power after this primordial era begins. Only then will you have the right to speak. Otherwise, in the previous primordial era, even if there were 3,000 chaos demon gods, who knew how many of them would have died when Pangu created the new world? Before that, they would have died early. It's rare that you're in a primordial era, and you happen to have a wisp of primordial luck of this primordial era. You don't want to die early at the beginning of a new primordial era like some of the chaos demon gods in the previous primordial era, right? That makes sense. I don't know what to say. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He stared blankly at the headless infant corpse and murmured, if that's the case, I really have to be the strongest one among the 3,000 chaos demon gods who controls the law of strength. Otherwise, I'm destined to be bullied by others. That's the logic. Go, find other layers of chaos. When you can sense the aura of violent energy, you can stop. After saying that, the headless infant corpse's figure flashed, and it was about to shoot toward Yi Xian. It was clear that after nagging for a while, it was going to return to Yi Xian's left chest as a corpse lantern tattoo and lay dormant there. Wait a minute. Yi Xian's eyebrows twitched as he subconsciously raised his hand to cover his left chest. He even turned his body sideways as if he was trying to avoid something. Regardless of whether this was useful or not, it was indeed a conditioned reflex. Action. It wasn't that he didn't want to let the baby's corpse return. Yi Xian and he were already in the same boat. The problem was that this child was too used to being a hands-off boss. He had been in a deep sleep for so long, and now that he had finally woken up, he just casually nagged a little. She wanted to rush back to sleep. Why do we have to do all the hard and tiring work? Thinking of this, Yi Xian's face immediately fell. He rolled his eyes and said in annoyance, "We are now in a cooperative relationship." "No, we have always been in a cooperative relationship. But don't you think that I am always the one causing trouble? You sure slept well. It was not easy for you to wake up this time. Can't you at least take care of something? How many years have you been tormenting yourself? I've been preparing for this ever since the great battle in the primordial era." Yi Xian's resentment was deep, but the headless corpse of an infant was enough to make him lose his temper with just one sentence. Thinking about it, how many years had he been tormenting himself? Since the headless infant corpse had not fallen in that battle and lived to this day, how could it not have made any arrangements? After that incomparable battle that destroyed the entire untainted world, the headless infant corpse and the green eye of the heavenly way of the untainted land had never faced each other head-on. However, both parties were definitely secretly making all kinds of arrangements and planning everything. It was all for the final battle that was bound to come in the future. For example, the netherworld furnace and the source of all evil, the void giant turtle. The former was the arrangement of the primeval heaven's eye, and the latter was obviously related to the headless infant corpse. That was a primeval supreme who had lived from the primordial age to this day. After being rescued by Yi Xian, he immediately disappeared. If there was no accident, this was one of the arrangements of the headless infant corpse. It was just that Yi Xian was not at that level yet. He was not qualified to know. In fact, even if he told him, it would be useless. At most, he would hear something new and feel happy and sad. Thinking of this, he suddenly felt embarrassed. He rubbed his left hand in front of his chest a few times, and put it down with a smile. He asked tentatively, "By the way, except for Boss Turtle, the supreme remote antiquity under your command is still alive now." "How many? Where did they go?" "Including the golden godly dragon and the primeval Yiksha?" "They are all related to me. It is not time for you to know this yet. When you become a Universe Supreme, you will naturally understand the arrangements." "Universe Supreme? Damn, that is still far away." Yi Xian rolled his eyes. After the Undying Emperor, there were 5 more great realms: Universe Knight, Universe Master, Universe Supreme, the Primeval Supreme, and the Primeval Supreme. The so-called supreme beings of the universe were actually great beings of the quasi-primordial era. Yi Xian hadn't even reached the level of emperor or emperor yet, let alone the 5 great realms behind him. He didn't know how long it would take for him to reach that level. Or find the ancestral star and enter it. Then I will let you know a part of the arrangements. Without waiting for Yi Xian to continue muttering, the headless infant corpse's soft and ancient voice sounded out once again. Back then, during the primordial war, the entire great desolate world collapsed. However, the ancestral star wasn't affected much and was affected by a strand of primordial energy. If I'm not mistaken, the ancestral star should be in the primordial chaos. I'm not the only one looking for it. Back then, my great enemy did the same. You have a strand of primordial chaos karmic luck. Entering the primordial chaos space, you're destined to receive the blessing of the primordial chaos grand Tao. Goo, perhaps the ancestral star will be found in your hands. Who knows? What? The ancestral star is here? Yi Xian's eyes instantly widened as he cried out involuntarily. This news was too shocking, and it made him feel even more surprised. At the same time that he cried out in alarm, his breathing also quickened. He had always suspected that this so-called ancestral planet was the planet where he was born. According to the description of the ancestral star, more than 70% of the ancestral star was an ocean. Looking from the universe void, it was a sea of blue. This was exactly the same as Yi Xian's ancestral star. He had no idea how many years had passed since he left the ancestral star and accidentally arrived at the nine-heaven star. If the ancestral star was really the ancestral star, he wondered if the flow of time there was the same as the outside world. Chapter 43-42. By the time Yi Xian recovered from his momentary absent-mindedness, the headless corpse in front of him had already disappeared. Looking down, a sinister and strange corpse lamp tattoo had appeared on his left chest. He was speechless. After all, the headless infant corpse only chatted with him for a while after waking up, but in the end, it fell into a deep slumber again. To put it bluntly, he still had to rely on himself to deal with this mess outside. After rolling his eyes and sighing, Yi Xian activated the devil ape bloodline in his body again and transformed into the star violent ape form. In this way, his cultivation base rose to the peak of the 9th rank of Regal Immortal, which was half of the 9th rank of Regal Immortal. Regal Immortal. In this state, he had the cultivation base of a half-emperor. His speed was satisfactory, and his body was only 30 meters tall. It was the most suitable. After adjusting his state of mind, Yi Xian temporarily tossed the matter of the ancestral star to the back of his mind. His body swayed, and in an instant, he transformed into a ray of light that shot towards the void in front of him. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared. Previously, Yi Xian had used his 6th devil ape form to explore with all his strength. At that time, his cultivation base was at the 6th rank of Regal Immortal, and his divine sense was much stronger than it was now. That was why he was able to detect the giant star in the void ahead. Now, no matter how much he extended his divine sense, he couldn't capture the shadow of the giant star at all. However, he had locked on to its location. After traveling at full speed for more than half a day, Yi Xian finally arrived in front of the enormous star. He didn't enter it, but instead stood in the air, staring at it with a strange expression as he carefully examined it. This was the first star that Yi Xian had discovered since entering this vast and boundless primordial chaos. To be more precise, it should be the only other matter that he'd discovered besides himself and this dark void. To be honest, Yi Xian really didn't want to give it up. He didn't even want to leave. Because once they left this place, who knew when they would be able to find another similar chaos nest? If there were no mishaps, there were as many as 3,000 nests of chaos in the primordial chaos void, which contained a chaos fiend god seed within the star core. That was not a small number. However, when these 3,000 nests of chaos were placed in a seemingly boundless expanse of dark space, this amount was far, far too few. It was simply insignificant. Even a drop in the ocean could be considered an optimistic estimate. At this moment, Yi Xian really had an impulse to enter the core of the star in front of him and split out a strand of his primordial spirit to occupy that place. He wanted to take over one of the 3,000 chaos demon gods and turn it into his doppelganger. This way, at least the title quest that was still in progress could be completed smoothly, and the punishment after failure could be avoided. Yi Xian did not want to lose the big picture for a small gain. In the end, after hesitating and pacing back and forth, he gritted his teeth and left. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the end of the void and was never seen again. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. During these 2 years, although Yi Xian's cultivation base had improved, his original body's cultivation base had remained at rank 8 Regal Immortal. For 2 whole years, he hadn't broken through even once. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that he simply didn't have the time. During these 2 years, Yi Xian hadn't stopped at all. He had been wandering around the boundless primordial chaos void. By now, he had gained some understanding of this dark void. As a matter of fact, there weren't just 3,000 layers of chaos origins that nurtured a chaos fiend god seed in the chaos void. During these 2 years, Yi Xian had also seen many ordinary stars. There were abandoned stars that didn't emit light or heat, blazing stars, and even some stars with life. However, most of them were plant life forms. Even if there were flesh and blood life forms, they were still alive. Their level of life forms was very low, and they didn't have intelligence. The reason he'd mistakenly believed that the primordial chaos void only had 3,000 nests of chaos was because he'd only been in it for a short period of time, and he'd been to far too few regions. Moreover, the primordial chaos void was so vast that it made one's hair stand on end. In addition to these ordinary stars with life and abandoned stars, Yi Xian had seen more than a dozen chaos nests in the past 2 years. Without exception, all of them were enormous stars. This was almost a common feature of all chaos nests. Yi Xian had seen many of them and gradually figured out the trick. Now, even if he was far away in the primordial chaos void, as long as he could detect it with his divine sense, he could tell at a glance whether a star in the primordial chaos void was an ordinary star or had a chaos fiend god seed inside its core. A chaos fiend god seed's chaos fiend god seed. Unfortunately, the laws of Great Tao and the dozen chaos nests that he had found in the past 2 years were not the supreme laws that Yi Xian wanted. They were the laws of strength that Pangu had obtained after the beginning of the last primordial chaos era. However, the aura of energy emitted from a few chaos nests was extremely powerful, far more powerful than the aura of the first chaos nests that Yi Xian had discovered in this primordial chaos void back then. During those few times, Yi Xian was tempted again and almost gave up on the decision to continue searching for nests of the laws of strength. However, in the end, he gritted his teeth and persevered. With strong reluctance, he turned around and left those chaos nests. It was a path of exploration that he didn't even know if it would lead to any results. It had already been 2 months since he last discovered a nest of chaos origins. In the past 2 months, Yi Xian hadn't found a single chaos nest. This probability was lower than the average of finding more than a dozen chaos nests in the past 2 years. The cycle was over. Therefore, he couldn't help but feel a little uneasy in his heart. These thoughts of worrying about personal gains and losses would appear in his mind from time to time in the past 2 days. It was also at this moment that Yi Xian's powerful divine sense detected a huge star in the distant primordial chaos void. It was projected into his mind. A single glance was all it took for him to confirm that this giant star was a new nest of chaos origins. However, he couldn't be sure what kind of laws of primordial chaos it contained, or whether it was the laws of strength. Because it was too far away, he had to get close to it in order to sense it. Without any hesitation, Yi Xian immediately moved at his maximum speed. His figure turned into a streak of light that shot toward the direction he had locked onto. Chapter 43-43. When the Wild Dragon battleship had first fallen into Yi Xian's hands, it had only been a small star fortress with a diameter of 5,000 meters. It was the masterpiece of humanity's technological pioneer Xingbo, the culmination of his blood and sweat. When Xingbo had first created the Wild Dragon battleship, it had only been the size of a chicken egg. However, this chicken egg was made up of an entire swarm of world insects. The swarm of world insects was a mysterious substance that existed between life and non-life forms. For example, the legendary Taisui fungus was such a thing. Of course, although the swarm of world insects and the Taisui fungus were theoretically the same substance, in reality, it was on a much higher level. There was simply no comparison. This could be deduced from its name. The swarm of world insects could slowly grow. As long as there was enough energy to allow this swarm of world insects to reproduce, even Xingbo himself didn't know what kind of state it would eventually reach. When it had first fallen into Yi Xian's hands, it had been a small star fortress with a diameter of 5,000 meters. Moreover, due to a lack of energy, the entire swarm of world insects had fallen into a deep slumber. Not only did it not continue to grow, but it was also unable to repair itself. Afterwards, Yi Xian had found the energy required for the swarm of world insects. This had allowed the swarm of world insects to rapidly grow. Step by step, they had grown from a large star fortress to a small star fortress, and then to a large star fortress with a diameter of 100,000 meters. This was not the end. After the last supply of energy, the Wild Dragon spaceship grew from 100,000 meters in diameter to more than 160,000 meters in a short period of time, which was 500,000 meters in diameter. Converted to kilometers, this was 500 kilometers. It was like a miniature star. This terrifying size was not much different from the Tianji city, the headquarters of the Tianji clan. It was absolutely astonishing. Even its shape had changed from its previous spherical shape to its current oblate shape. It was more suitable for galloping through the universe. Because it was even faster. In addition, compared to the last evolution not long ago, the life giant plug was now many times larger than before. Due to the use of the space folding technology, its internal space had also been significantly improved. The view inside was very broad, as if it was an independent heavenly grotto with mountains and rivers. It was impossible to tell that this was the interior of a star fortress. This was only one of the 18 layers of the fortress. Every level had different sceneries and different uses. At present, the Long Yihao, which had grown into a giant fortress in space, contained only 20,000 demons led by Gue Hai Yidao and Sang Qingyu, apart from 1,000,000 fortresses of various sizes controlled by countless intelligent robots. A scout, these 20,000 demon scouts were currently in deep slumber, cultivating. Calculating the time, Yi Xian had not seen them for several years. The reason why he hadn't provided the giant life fortress with energy for so long was because the world insects that formed the giant life fortress needed the energy to reproduce and grow. It was actually obtained from the eggs of the evil spirit slime. Yi Xian did indeed have a mother nest of the evil spirit slime. It was originally in the bottom cabin of the Black Wind ship, but it had now been moved to the bottom cabin of the Long Yihao's giant life fortress. Unfortunately, the Long Yihao was now too big. Although this mother nest of the evil spirit slime could continuously produce new eggs, the special energy it contained was only enough to maintain the daily operations of the Long Yihao's giant life fortress. There was still a little surplus under the premise of operating. This surplus energy was stored. Although the total amount accumulated over time was considerable, it was basically enough to allow the Long Yihao's giant life fortress to undergo another major evolution. However, Yi Xian did not choose to do so previously. This was because the energy required to form the Long Yihao's giant life fortress was too special. At present, he had not found a replacement energy source. Therefore, Yi Xian had to leave a certain amount of reserve energy. Otherwise, if an unforeseen accident happened, the Long Yihao would definitely settle down. It was because of these reasons that the Long Yihao's giant life fortress had been in its current state for many years. It had not continued to evolve. Yi Xian was also very helpless about this. However, today, when he discovered that the Long Yihao's giant life fortress in his undying world suddenly trembled for no reason, Yi Xian suddenly had a flash of inspiration. A very strange premonition surged in his heart. The problem of the Long Yihao's giant life fortress evolving again could be solved. Perhaps it could be solved immediately. In fact, even the problem of the future energy supply of the giant life fortress's giant life fortress was the same. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Yi Xian did not hesitate any longer. His figure flashed, and he used his extreme speed to rush towards the giant star in the void in front of him. The reason why the giant life fortress's giant life fortress's giant life fortress's giant life fortress's giant life fortress must have something to do with this giant star. More accurately speaking, it should have something to do with the nest of chaos in the star's core. If he was not mistaken, the energy contained in the nest of chaos was what the countless tiny world bugs in the world bug community needed. And it wasn't just a normal need, it was a crazed desire. At the very least, the countless tiny world worms that spawned from the world worms had never reacted so shockingly to the energy within the eggs of the slime wraith mother nest. If all these speculations were true, Yi Xian would not hesitate at all. He would definitely seize all the special energy resources contained in the core of the giant star in front of him. Even if it meant killing a future chaos demon god, he wouldn't hesitate. After all, the chaos demon god wasn't his subordinate and was still in the process of being nurtured. Right now, it was most likely just a seed of life, so it didn't matter if it was destroyed. With this thought in mind, Yi Xian quickly arrived at the vicinity of the giant planet. Without the slightest hesitation, he directly charged towards the surface of the planet. Whoosh! An incomparably sharp sound pierced through the air. Yi Xian's figure was like a meteor, rushing toward the surface of the planet at an astonishing speed. He did not stop at all. With a loud bang, he smashed a huge crater on the surface of the planet, but his figure was not damaged. He was not damaged at all, but his speed did not decrease. In just a few breaths, he had already rushed into the core of the giant star. Chapter 43-44. What appeared before his eyes was a dazzling world. The core of this gigantic star was filled with all kinds of pure crystals that emitted dazzling light. As soon as Yi Xian rushed into the star core, a familiar system notification sounded in his mind. Before he entered the star core, he did not come into contact with the various crystals contained in the star core. Therefore, the system notification did not appear. However, as soon as Yi Xian entered the star core, not only did the devouring system in his body immediately send out all kinds of notifications, asking if he should immediately start collecting them, even the system's information database contained information and data related to these energy crystals. All of them were updated at the same time. There were so many that it was numbing to hearing them. Yi Xian did not know which chaos demon god was being nurtured in this nest of chaos origins. Regarding this, the system did not send out any notifications, and the information database could not be searched either. He could not even see anything that resembled the life seed of a demon god in the star core. Even when he used the powerful divine sense of an emperor to investigate in detail, it was still the same. The entire star core was filled with all kinds of dazzling and colorful energy crystals. There was nothing else. Perhaps the life seed of the chaos demon god being nurtured in this nest of chaos origins had not even appeared yet. Perhaps it had already died in the womb and dissipated, who knew? Yi Xian was not interested in paying attention to it at all. At this moment, his entire mind was completely occupied by the various kinds of pure energy crystals that could be seen everywhere in this nest of chaos origins. This star was a nest of chaos origins. It was extremely huge. Even the largest natural celestial body in the three main dimensions of the universe was not as big as it. Therefore, the diameter of this star core was also shocking. Just the diameter of this star core alone was comparable to that of a meteor. And this star core with a diameter comparable to that of a meteor was filled with energy crystals of all kinds of colors. There were more than 100 kinds in total. As soon as Yi Xian rushed into the star core, the familiar system notification sounded in his mind continuously. It did not stop for a few minutes. For a few minutes, the system would give a notification for every kind of energy crystal. More than 100 kinds, one could imagine. In the end, Yi Xian couldn't be bothered to listen to it anymore. He allowed it to play as he began to get busy. These 100 or so types of energy crystals were all top-grade resources. After all, they were resources from a chaos locus in the primordial chaos void. How bad could they be? Yi Xian couldn't be bothered to figure out the uses of most of the energy crystals. With a wave of his hand, they all turned into dazzling rays of light and were stored in his undying world. Just like that, after working for nearly 2 hours, most of the energy crystals that could be ignored for the time being were finally collected. In the blink of an eye, more than 90% of the enormous planet core had been emptied. There were only 5 energy crystals of different colors that Yi Xian had purposely left behind. These 5 types of energy crystals were exactly what the 4 Great Starry Skies battle armors needed to upgrade and reforge them. The extra purple crystal was the source of the mysterious energy that made the world's insects crazy. There were a lot of these 5 types of energy crystals, especially the purple crystal that the world's insects needed. Without any hesitation, Yi Xian left behind 10,000 of these 5 types of energy crystals and stored them in his undying world in case he needed them in the future. With a wave of his hand, whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the densely packed sound of air breaking continued to ring out, and it lasted for a few minutes. After a few minutes, all of the purple crystals were collected by Yi Xian and stored in his undying world in the undying world. With this huge amount of purple energy crystals, not only would the undying world undergo a brand new transformation and evolution, the problem of energy supply in the future would also be completely solved. However, Yi Xian had to figure out how to use this batch of mysterious purple energy crystals. Otherwise, if there was no limit, the world's insects would continue to absorb the energy from the purple crystals and continue to reproduce and evolve. This would continue until all of the purple energy crystals were used up. In order to prevent such a situation from happening, Yi Xian sent all of the remaining purple energy crystals into the second layer of the undying world's undying world and immediately gave a command. This huge amount of purple energy crystals was divided into 2 equal portions. One portion was sealed in the storage and used as the energy source and storage source of the undying world's undying world. The other portion was to be distributed to the entire world's insects, allowing them to absorb as much as they wanted, until this half of the purple energy crystals were completely used up. After the command was given, the undying world's undying world and Yi Xian's undying world immediately trembled violently. Following that, there was no other movement, as if it was dead, not moving at all. However, Yi Xian could clearly sense a crazy biological frequency that was faintly spreading out from within the undying world's undying world. This was clearly the world's insects that formed the undying world's undying world. And the rhythm of reproduction, there was no doubt that the transformation and evolution process this time would not end in a day or two. The fact that these purple energy crystals had such a fatal attraction to the world's self-evolved insects was enough to show how powerful their effects were. In addition, there was such a huge amount of crystals. According to Yi Xian's conservative estimate, it would take at least several years for half of the purple crystals to be completely depleted. In that case, there was no need to keep watching. As this thought flashed through his mind, Yi Xian's consciousness immediately retreated from the undying world within his body. His eyes flashed and landed on the last 4 different colored energy crystals within the star core. Yi Xian already knew that these 4 types of energy crystals were coincidentally the core resources he needed to level up the 4 great starry sky battle armors in his hands. These 4 astral battlecruisers were Yi Xian's trump cards back then. Relying on them, Yi Xian could kill domain lords and even sector lords when he was in the universe realm. When he was in the sector lord realm, he could make the undying old monsters retreat in defeat and even kill them on the spot. But now, as his cultivation level increased to the undying world's undying world, the power of these 4 astral battlecruisers was far from enough. For this reason, Yi Xian had previously used the treasure-seeking mouse's bloodline in the fox ferret's body to obtain energy suitable for the evolution of the 4 astral battlecruisers' bloodline. Now, these 4 astral battlecruisers had all fallen into a deep slumber. When they woke up, they would definitely break out of their cocoons and transform into butterflies. However, the evolution of the astral battlecruiser's life level was only software. As the hardware, if the astral battlecruisers did not undergo a corresponding upgrade, they would not be able to support the terrifying energy released by the transformed astral battlecruisers. Chapter 43-45. Within each of the 4 starry skies battlecruisers, there is now a kinetic energy race hibernating. However, the hardware upgrade of the 4 starry skies battlecruisers will not affect the kinetic energy races hibernating in the thousands of beehive nodes of the battlecruisers. Therefore, the kinetic energy races that were hibernating had to be moved out first. This would save a lot of trouble. Yi Xian did not waste too much time. After making the decision, he immediately took action. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh, with a wave of his hand. The last 4 different colored energy crystals were all kept in his body. However, he did not send them into the undying world. Instead, he passed them to the devouring system. These energy crystals would be used to upgrade the hardware of the 4 galactic battle giants. Yi Xian did not know how many energy crystals would be used for this upgrade. However, the system would automatically transfer the remaining energy crystals to the undying world in case of emergencies. Required. After that, Yi Xian took out the 4 galactic battle giants that were originally in his undying world and passed them to the devouring system. Then, he immediately ordered the forging system attached to the devouring system to start the upgrade of the 4 galactic battle giants. A comprehensive upgrade. Wang, a low buzzing sound could be heard. In the next moment, system notifications rang in Yi Xian's mind one after another. The hardware upgrade of the 4 galactic battle giants had begun. This process was obviously not something that could be completed in a short period of time. However, it was not as long as the evolution of the giant life fortress of the Wild Dragon battleship. The giant life fortress of the Wild Dragon battleship was a complete transformation and evolution of the entire world's insects. On the other hand, the four galactic battle giants were merely hardware upgrades and modifications based on their current foundation. They were completely different. The concept and time required were naturally different as well. Furthermore, even if the four galactic battle giants were added together, they would not be as large as the giant life fortress of the Wild Dragon battleship. Therefore, according to Yi Xian's estimation and deduction, this upgrade would only take about half a month. It would be completed completely. Yi Xian was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he sat down cross-legged in the core of the planet and started a short period of cultivation. Half a month later, Yi Xian, who was in a state of cultivation, suddenly opened his eyes. With a flash of light, he stood up and took a step forward. His figure was already in the void of the universe outside the planet. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! With a wave of his hand, a sharp sound of breaking through the air rang out. 4 rays of light shot out from his hand. The 4 great starry sky battle claws that had just completed the hardware upgrade were directly summoned by him. They formed a row in the air in front of Yi Xian. At first glance, the galactic battle giants of the Wild Dragon battleship, but upon closer inspection, there was a slight difference before and large Yi Xian was of the galactic battle giants battleship. The current 4 great clones were bigger than before, and they had a more metallic luster, giving people an extremely heavy and dignified feeling. O Yi Xian battle giantesses of the giant battle giant 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 battle giant 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 battle giant giant giant, was, the god energy crystals. However, there was no way to know the exact extent of the power at the moment because the 4 major kinetic races in the 4 major battle clans were all still in hibernation at the moment. Even if Yi Xian wanted to test its power, he could only do so after the 4 kinetic races in the Warhulla successfully completed their life form transition. After examining it for a while, Yi Xian waved his hand and put away the 4 great galactic battle talismans. Then, he set off on his journey again. Although this unexpected gain made him extremely satisfied, and he finally solved the problem of upgrading the hardware of the 4 starry sky battle trolls, the real business, that is, the 6th title mission of the system, was still nowhere in sight. Calculating the time, Yi Xian realized that 2 years had already passed. Although he still hadn't received a reminder of the mission's deadline, this matter couldn't be dragged on any longer. Yi Xian felt a strong sense of urgency. In the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed. This time, Yi Xian's luck was better. At the end of the void in front of him with his divine sense, a few stars unexpectedly appeared. One of them was especially large, and with just a glance, he was able to confirm that this star was a nest of chaos that gave birth to a chaos demon god. With a jolt of his spirit, Yi Xian immediately launched at full speed and shot toward it. Not long after, his figure came to an abrupt stop in the void. Thousands of miles in front of him was the incomparably large nest star. To his slight disappointment, this nest of chaos clearly still had nothing to do with the so-called strongest power law. The aura emitted from the star was even weaker than the nest star that had a large number of energy crystals previously. Score. Although it's impossible for this place to be a primal chaos origin nest that contains the laws of power, perhaps there will be other gains within the star core. With the gains from the previous primal chaos origin nest, Yi Xian had unknowingly started to think about all of the nests. Although this primal chaos origin nest wasn't the target he was looking for, he still didn't plan on letting it go. Before he finished speaking, his figure had already flashed and shot toward it, whang. Just as his figure was about 1,000 miles away from the surface of the star, a raging buzzing sound rang out. Yi Xian's figure, which was originally falling at an extremely fast speed, seemed to have crashed into an incomparably solid invisible barrier, sealing it with him. Even with the cultivation strength of a 9th stage king, he was unable to pass through it. Furthermore, he was repelled by a majestic force that made his hair stand on end. He only managed to stabilize himself after tumbling in the void outside the star for tens of thousands of miles. Shaking his head, Yi Xian looked at the nest star in front of him again. His face was already filled with shock. Under the collision just now, not only did Yi Xian's figure tumble back tens of thousands of miles, even his blood and qi were in turmoil. Even now, his figure had stabilized, and his eyes were still seeing stars, although this had something to do with the inertia force formed when he fell toward the star at an extremely fast speed. The main reason was that the invisible field that enveloped the source hive star was too powerful. What's going on? Why is there such a terrifying invisible force field outside the nest of chaos? Looking at the nest star in front of him in a daze, Yi Xian was stunned for more than 10 minutes before he attacked again. He punched towards the nest star in front of him from afar. Boom! Rumble! An earth-shattering rumbling sound rang out in an instant. In his line of sight, in the cosmic void thousands of miles away from the surface of the nest star, a layer of incomparably solid ripples appeared. It only shook slightly for a moment before it disappeared again in the blink of an eye. Chapter 43-46. Boom! As the guess surfaced in his heart, Yi Xian unwillingly attacked again. He threw a punch at the source nest star in front of him. However, he had suffered a small loss because he was caught off guard, so this time, he did not rashly use too much power. In front of him, a loud rumbling sound came. In the void thousands of miles away from the source nest star, another ripple appeared. It shook slightly, and then immediately disappeared. Once again confirming the guess in his heart, Yi Xian immediately shook his head and smiled bitterly. He did not try again, and there was no need to try again. It seems that all the source nest stars, once the demon god seed germinates, will be protected by an invisible ripple. It will be strong if it is strong, weak if it is weak. In short, it is impossible to break. At this moment, Yi Xian was so regretful that his intestines were about to turn green. The source nest stars he had encountered before did not have such ripples, but Yi Xian had only made a move once. Now, it seemed that as long as this ripple appeared, the demon god seed inside the source nest star would germinate. No matter what Yi Xian wanted to do, he would not be able to do as he wished. The reason why he regretted it now was because he had encountered so many source nest stars where the demon god seed had yet to germinate. However, Yi Xian was occupied by the source nest star that was eager to find the source nest star that gave birth to the power demon god. He ignored the benefits that were right in front of him. It would be very difficult to encounter such an opportunity again in the future. At the same time, an even stronger sense of urgency quietly surfaced in his heart at this moment. Previously, Yi Xian did not know that such a situation would occur once the demon god seed germinated in all the source nest stars. In addition, the system did not set a time limit for the completion of this title mission, so although he was a little anxious, it was not very serious. But now it was different. Although the system did not set a time limit for the completion of this title mission, in fact, this time limit had already existed. There were only 3,000 source nest stars in this primordial void. If the demon god seed inside all the source nest stars had germinated, and Yi Xian still could not find the source nest star that gave birth to the power demon god, and use it to complete the system's title quest, in that case, the final result would undoubtedly be that Yi Xian would not have any more chances. Even if he found all 3,000 nesting stars, since he could not break through the ripples and enter the stars, how could he refine them? If Zhang Xian was unable to refine it, he would not be able to complete the title quest and would be judged as a failure by the devouring system in his body. F***ck. He couldn't wait any longer. Since he had already encountered a nestor star that had already sprouted, it meant that the other nestor stars would soon be there. It was even possible that most of the nestor stars had already sprouted demon god seeds. Germinate. Thinking of this, Yi Xian could not sit still on the spot. He even began to waver in his desire to find the nesting star that gave birth to the power overlord. His figure flickered, and he continued to shoot toward the vast universe void in front of him. Forget it, if I can find it within a month, then it will be fine. Otherwise, a month later, as long as I find a source with a demon god seed that has not sprouted yet, a month later, as long as I find a source with a demon god seed that has not sprouted yet, nestor star. At that time, I will immediately enter and complete the system's mission first. As these words rang out, Yi Xian's figure turned into a stream of light in the blink of an eye and disappeared at the end of the universe in front of him. He was gone. In the environment of the universe, a month passed in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian was very disappointed, because in the past month, he had indeed encountered new nesting stars. Moreover, there were quite a few of them, 3 in total. However, without exception, the demon god seeds nurtured within these 3 nesting stars had all sprouted. Once the distance between the 3 nesting stars was about 1,000 kilometers, a ripple would appear in an instant. It was so light that it seemed like nothing, but no matter how Yi Xian tried to attack, he was unable to cross it and rush into the interior of the star. After encountering this situation 3 times in a row, Yi Xian became more and more anxious. He now suspected that all the nesting stars were already in this situation. Even if there were still demon god seeds that had not sprouted yet, there were probably not too many of them. Many, imperceptibly, the sense of urgency that shrouded his mind grew stronger and stronger. At this moment, he had already completely thrown the matter of looking for the source nest star that nurtured the power demon god seed to the back of his mind. He couldn't even complete the title mission issued by the system, so how could he dare to hope for more? A month had already passed. Yi Xian was now focused on finding a nesting star that had yet to germinate the demon god seed in this primordial void as soon as possible. In this way, no matter what kind of primordial law was nurtured inside, Yi Xian would not hesitate at all. He would immediately rush in and plant a strand of primordial spirit seed in the core area of the origin nest. He would occupy the nest and complete the system's mission first. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days passed. During these 7 days, Yi Xian did not gain anything and did not encounter a single nesting star. Just as his heart was becoming more and more anxious, in the originally empty void of the universe in front of him, a huge star appeared. An incomparably huge star suddenly appeared in the range of his extended divine sense. What caused Yi Xian to be incomparably pleasantly surprised was that the aura emitted from the source nest star actually gave him an incomparably berserk feeling of power. It can't be such a coincidence, right? I actually found the nesting star that gave birth to the primordial law at such a critical moment. As he muttered to himself, Yi Xian's eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, his figure flashed, and he instantly unleashed an extremely fast speed, shooting towards the giant star in front of him. At this moment, not only was he excited, he was also extremely nervous. His heart was almost in his throat. This was because although he had found this nesting star that gave birth to the primordial law, it was still unknown whether the demon god's seed inside had already sprouted. If it had already sprouted, then for Yi Xian, the huge surprise that he saw in front of him would probably turn into a shock in the blink of an eye. Even this nesting star that gave birth to the strongest laws had already sprouted, so what hope was there for the nesting stars that gave birth to other weaker laws? If that was really the case, then the system's title mission this time was destined to be impossible to complete. However, this worry was obviously unnecessary. As Yi Xian approached, in just a few minutes, he arrived at the void close to this giant star. Chapter 43-47. Could it be that there is really some kind of heaven's will that is controlling all of this? Even the demon god seeds nurtured in the nests with weaker laws had already sprouted, but this nests with the strongest laws were still the same. The instant his feet touched the ground, Yi Xian's heart, which had already reached his throat, finally returned to his chest. He took a long breath and muttered with emotion, or perhaps, it's really as the headless infant corpse said earlier. This Star Lord's body. My Star Lord's body? Is there really a strand of primordial luck on my body? Otherwise, how could the world be so coincidental? This source nest star that breeds the law of the strongest power seems to have been waiting for this star master. After a while, Yi Xian did not dare to stay any longer. His figure flashed and he rushed to the depths of the star under his feet, all the way to the core of the star. After a short while, the star core arrived. Yi Xian plunged head first into it, and in an instant, a boundless aura of energy assaulted his face. With his current cultivation base that was close to half a step into the Emperor realm, under the envelopment of this aura of energy, he actually had a kind of feeling. Deep sense of powerlessness. There was no doubt that this nesting star was the law of primordial power that Yi Xian was looking for. What he had to do now was to activate the clone system attached to the system, separate a strand of primordial spirit, turn it into a seed, and plant it in this nesting star. The soil in which this strand of primordial spirit seed was planted, if he guessed correctly, should be the blood-red crystal in the centermost area of the core of the star. Without any hesitation, Yi Xian immediately ordered the devouring system in his body to activate the clone system. Then, a familiar system prompt sounded in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have discovered the life origin crystal. Attribute, energy crystal form. Level, perfect pure level. Grade, primordial law level. Do you want to immediately refine it into a clone? Ding! Congratulations to the host, the clone system has been successfully activated. Current level, level 1. Current level can apply for number of clones, 0. Ding! Congratulations to the host, the 6th level of the system title preparation is completed, you have obtained the system reward, choose one of the two, please choose. 1. Clone system level increased once. 2. Randomly activate another subsidiary system. Do you want to choose now? Upon hearing this notification, Yi Xian was stunned. His doppelganger system was indeed only at level 1. At level 1, there was only one doppelganger that could be refined using the doppelganger system. This slot had already been taken up by the devouring treasured body. In other words, Yi Xian couldn't use the doppelganger system to create a second doppelganger. Fortunately, the system had already noticed this bug and actually made a concession. It gave the level 6 system title reward in advance and gave the player the option of choosing one of the two. He could either choose to activate another subsidiary system, or choose to upgrade the current doppelganger system. If there were no accidents, the doppelganger system would be upgraded from level 1 to level 2, and the number of doppelgangers that could be condensed with the doppelganger system would also change from 1 to 2. Now there were 2 of them. As such, there was no need to consider the so-called choice of one of the two. The benefits in front of him were more attractive. Who the hell knew what the other side system would be like? Thinking of this, Yi Xian didn't hesitate and immediately responded. He chose to upgrade the doppelganger system directly. Soon, the familiar system notification sounded in his mind again. Ding! Congratulations to the host, the doppelganger system has been successfully upgraded. Current level, level 2. Number of doppelgangers that can be applied for at the current level, 1. Do you want to immediately apply to refine a doppelganger? Without hesitation, Yi Xian immediately replied again and immediately began to refine a doppelganger. Ding! Congratulations to the host, it has been confirmed to be used immediately. Target confirmed, system energy adjustment, progress 1. At this point, Yi Xian's heart was completely relieved. Without hesitation, he immediately sat down cross-legged in the core of the Source Hive star. He closed his eyes and entered a state of cultivation where he forgot about everything else. Soon, there was an invisible suction force in his body. This suction force was extremely mysterious and seemed to be targeting his primordial spirit consciousness. Faintly, Yi Xian felt as if a strand of his primordial spirit had been separated from his consciousness. It was fused into a tiny dot of light by some mysterious force, and then slowly floated out from his Violet Palace spiritual altar. At this moment, Yi Xian seemed to have a second perspective. This tiny light spot that floated out of his Purple Mansion spiritual altar seemed to have become his other eye. As it left his body, Yi Xian saw his original body sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed and entered a state of cultivation. Then, this perspective slowly moved forward. The blood-red crystal not far in front of him, which was only about 10 feet in radius, became bigger and bigger in his line of sight. The bigger it got, the more it replaced everything in the end. Buzz. At this moment, a buzzing sound came from Yi Xian's mind. The last thing that the additional perspective saw was a boundless blood-red color. In the next moment, this perspective disappeared. Yi Xian's original body, which was sitting cross-legged in the core of the star core, opened his eyes. When he looked at the blood-red crystal not far in front of him again, he vaguely felt a connection with it. It was as if this blood-red crystal was originally from the same bloodline as Yi Xian. Obviously, this origin crystal of life that was originally going to give birth to a chaos demon god with the strongest primordial law, which was the law of strength, had now been obtained by Yi Xian. He had planted a primordial spirit seed in the deepest part of this origin crystal of life. Once this primordial spirit seed germinated, nothing could be changed. In the near future, when this blood-red crystal gave birth to a complete chaos demon god, Yi Xian's second doppelganger would also be born. According to his calculations, this time should not be too long, because the great wilderness world, which had collapsed countless years ago, would soon fully descend into the present world. If there were no accidents, the great wilderness world of the past would fully descend into the present world. This should be the moment when the 3,000 chaos demon gods in the primordial void would rush out of the star core and be born. The current Yi Xian could be said to be looking forward to the arrival of that day. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, the expected system prompt sounded at this moment, resounding in Yi Xian's mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host. System title exploration mission completed. System title upgrade successful. System current title, Level 6, Interstellar Controller. Interstellar Controller, this title comes with a halo effect. On the basis of the previous 5 levels of titles, Interstellar Traveler, Interstellar Adventurer, Interstellar Explorer, Interstellar Pathfinder, and Interstellar Raider, a brand new system ability will be added. Chapter 43-48. Whoosh! With a faint sound of breaking through the air, Yi Xian's figure rushed out of the star core and came to the void of the universe outside. He did not use any of the resources in this source hive star. After all, it was used to nurture his second system doppelganger. If he took away a piece of crystal in the source hive star, it would lead to an imperfect doppelganger. That would be a big problem. The loss outweighed the gain. Buzz! Almost at the same moment Yi Xian's figure rushed out of the star core, a low buzzing sound suddenly came from the source hive star behind him. Yi Xian understood and subconsciously turned his head to look. Sure enough, he saw a layer of blood-red ripples appear on the surface of the entire star core. It was only 1,000 miles away from the surface of the star core, and it disappeared in a flash. After all, this source hive star was nurtured with the strongest primordial laws of force. Therefore, not only was the color of the ripples that protected the entire star core different from the others, it was blood-red and gave off the same strength. Yi Xian had a very strong feeling that not to mention him now, even the headless infant corpse would not be able to break through the seemingly thin layer of blood-red ripples. After all, this was the place where the primordial laws of force were nurtured. In this way, he was finally completely relieved. It was as if a mountain had been lifted from his heart, and he suddenly felt much more relaxed. Although not long in the future, the once shattered primordial world would completely descend into the present world like a catastrophe. Now that Yi Xian had the strongest doppelganger in the process of nurturing, he was obviously more confident. This feeling of relief suddenly gave birth to a mysterious change in his state of mind. It seemed that he was about to break through again. In fact, during this period of time, Yi Xian had not been cultivating. Calculating the time, it had been a long time since he had a breakthrough. Now that he had resolved the knot in his heart, it was the best time to strike while the iron was hot and start a breakthrough. Without any hesitation, he immediately rushed over. 2 days later, he saw an abandoned star core in the void ahead. With a flash, Yi Xian rushed into the star core of this abandoned star core and sat down cross-legged, preparing to break through in seclusion. Whoosh! Swish, 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 sonic booms rang out one after another. These were all cultivation resources that Yi Xian retrieved from his undying world. There was also a liquid sphere with a diameter of several hundred meters. There was a strange fragrance that was so thick that it made one's hair stand on end. This liquid sphere was filled with the blood of the demonic vine. Yi Xian had only used this resource once before, and its effects were still in peak condition, so he took out some more this time. In any case, he had an astonishing amount of resources, so he wasn't afraid of running out. Soon, Yi Xian activated the power of the Shenong Cauldron's domain and compressed it to the size of an infant's fist. It looked like a strange, fragrant pill. Yi Xian didn't stop at all when he swallowed the crimson pill that was compressed from a sea of demonic vine's blood. He then swallowed 10 drops of evil origin fluid and 100 cubic meters of purple gold top-grade great flesh medicine. Up until now, his cultivation was getting stronger and stronger. Therefore, every time he broke through, he would need more top-notch cultivation resources. After doing all this, he waved his hand and summoned the Shinong cauldron. He took a step forward and arrived at the mouth of the cauldron, which was shrouded in 9-colored fog. Without hesitation, he closed his eyes and sat down cross-legged, beginning a new round of breakthrough. Whoosh! The sound of chains covering the sky and earth rang out loudly in Yi Xian's body. This time, there was only one shackle that appeared in his body. Yi Xian was already familiar with everything that happened next, so he didn't stop at all. He immediately activated a huge river. The river of energy that formed in his body began to circulate through the 100 meridians in his body, accumulating energy. In the end, when all the energy had been refined, the chain broke with a single impact. As this extremely thick shackle was finally completely broken, the expected system notification rang out in Yi Xian's mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through the realm of the ancient void tactics. Current realm, Peak Emperor level 9. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through the realm of the physical body. Current realm, Peak Emperor level 9. With this breakthrough, Yi Xian's battle strength increased again, finally reaching the peak of the Emperor level. Before this, his original body's strength was only at the 8th level of the Emperor level. Once he activated the ancient demon ape bloodline power in his body, he could instantly reach the Emperor level. Peak Emperor level 9. Once he used the 9 demon ape transformation and reached the 6th transformation, his battle strength would immediately soar to the 6th level of the Emperor level. And now, after activating the ancient demon ape bloodline in his body, Yi Xian would instantly reach the 1st level of the Emperor level. If he used the bloodline power of the 9 demon ape transformation and reached the 6th transformation, his peak battle strength would reach the 7th level of the Emperor level, which was the late Emperor level. His battle strength would soar by a large margin. However, this was obviously not the end. This time, what Yi Xian wanted to break through was the normal state of his body. The Emperor realm. Xiao. Xiao, xiao, xiao. Without any hesitation or even any intention of resting, Yi Xian waved his hand again and took out the second batch of cultivation resources that he had already prepared from the undying world within his body and the Shinong cauldron beneath him. These resources were all swallowed into his stomach, and once again transformed into a large river of energy with a majestic aura. Finally, and most importantly, was a level 23 pill that he had prepared long ago. There were a total of 5 level 23 pills in the cauldron. He had given 1 to Green Bull for his own use and 2 to the public resources of the forbidden land of Phoenix Blood. There were 2 left. The one Yi Xian took out was the best of the 2. After using it, there was only 1 left. Very quickly, this level 23 treasure pill that emitted a strong aura of the Emperor was swallowed by Yi Xian with his mouth open. Rumble. An earth-shattering sound was heard, followed by the terrifying sound of chains. This time, Yi Xian wanted to break through the Emperor-level shackles, so his movements were naturally different. A thick and solid chain appeared in the chest of his physical body. The clanking sounds of the incomparable shackles continued to be heard. This thick chain represented the cultivation level of the Emperor level. Once it was broken, Yi Xian would instantly become an Emperor-level immortal. As he urged the great river of energy in his body, he endured the intense pain he had never experienced before and continued to attack. In the end, a loud clanging sound was heard. The shackles on his chest were finally broken. The anticipated system notification sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through the ancient void tactics. Current realm, Emperor level 1. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through the blood chi realm. Current realm, Emperor level 1. Chapter 43-49. Screech. Yi Xian raised his head and let out an incomparably excited and joyful roar. With a wave of his hand, he put away the Shinong cauldron and took a step out of the star core. His entire body was emitting a purplish-gold multicolored light. From this moment onwards, he was an emperor. Boom! Rumble, almost in the next instant, in the void of the universe outside the life star beneath his feet, a large amount of black tribulation clouds surged over. The amount was so large that it made one's hair stand on end, enveloping the entire star, as if the original atmosphere had been covered again. The second layer of black atmosphere, it was obvious that with Yi Xian's breakthrough, his Emperor Tribulation had arrived as well. No wonder his aura was so terrifying. After all, this was the Emperor Tribulation, so its power naturally surpassed that of before. It was only natural for the tribulation clouds to have such a scale. And now, what he wanted was the baptism of a wave of lightning tribulation. In the face of a lightning tribulation that would cause cultivators to pale in fright, Yi Xian's dictionary had never had the word escape. Roar. At this moment, he raised his head and roared. His hair fluttered in the wind, and the aura in his body was completely activated. His entire body was like the hottest human-shaped star, and within his body, endless treasure light was blooming, through the 1.08 billion pores on his body. It shot out. Crack. The tribulation clouds in the sky instantly surged even more violently. In a short breath of time, an incomparably thick bolt of purplish gold lightning had already smashed down. Rai Di Seal. With a soft cry, Yi Xian waved his hand, and the Rai Di Seal that was suspended above his sea of consciousness shot out. Screech. With the appearance of the Rai Di Seal, an incomparably resounding and tyrannical roar immediately resounded from within the Emperor Seal. This was the Emperor Seal's thunder spirit rejoicing. To it, this kind of Emperor Tribulation was the best opportunity to temper itself. Back then, the Thunder Sparrow that was refined into a Thunder Spirit was only at the third level of the immortal realm. However, now, because of the nurturing of the Rai Di Seal, coupled with the nurturing of the Thunder Tribulation last time, it had already broken through to the immortal realm. This time, after sensing the powerful aura of the Emperor Tribulation, the Emperor Seal's Thunder Spirit rejoiced again, because this Thunder Tribulation was not only Yi Xian's opportunity, but also its opportunity. After the baptism of the Thunder Tribulation, the Rai Di Seal would become even stronger, and the Emperor Seal's Thunder Spirit would also become even stronger. It was very likely to break through to the immortal realm and become an Emperor Immortal Realm. Such a huge benefit made it extremely excited. It had a feeling that it was unable to restrain itself any longer and wanted to rush out, stay in the Imperial Seal obediently. There are still 3 waves of purple gold lightning in the Imperial Tribulation. I only need the last wave. I'll leave the first 2 waves to you and the Imperial Seal. Slightly raising his head, the words that came out of Yi Xian's mouth were exactly the same as before. He was still distributing the 3 waves of lightning tribulation that were about to descend from above his head. As soon as he finished, the first thunder tribulation struck down. Although it was heading towards Yi Xian's head, it did not leak out at all, as it was all absorbed by the Rai Di Seal. Screech. Almost in the next moment, the Thunder Spirit's cheering voice came from the Emperor's Seal again. At this time, a second loud cracking sound came from the sky above his head. A purple gold lightning bolt that was even thicker than before, reaching 100 feet in size, instantly pounced over. However, Yi Xian did not move at all. With his hands behind his back, he allowed the Rai Di Seal to absorb the second Thunder Tribulation Seal. Almost in the next instant, an even more joyous and ruthless roar came out of the Imperial Seal, revealing the chi of a half-emperor. This time, although the Emperor Seal's Thunder Spirit did not directly break through, it was almost there. Maybe after a period of digestion, it would be able to break through to Emperor level. Curling his lips, Yi Xian waved his hand and kept the Rai Di Seal within his body. With a flash, he charged towards the terrifying Thunder Tribulation cloud above his head. Kacha! Very quickly, the last Thunder Tribulation lightning struck down. Its power was even more terrifying. Although it was still purple gold in color, its diameter had increased by more than 10 times, giving off a feeling that it was going to destroy heaven and earth. Howl! Yi Xian let out an angry roar. He did not dodge. Instead, he charged forward and within a blink of an eye, he was completely submerged within the Thunder Tribulation lightning. Rumble. From that moment onwards, terrifying explosions rang out incessantly within the vast purplish gold tribulation clouds. The vast expanse of space was enveloped by the sea of purplish gold lightning. The space trembled slightly, as if it could explode at any moment. It could completely collapse. After raging for more than 10 breaths, the vast thunder tribulation sea finally disappeared completely. The space was clear once again. Xiao. Yi Xian stepped out. His body was not injured at all, but his treasure body was still glowing brightly. He emitted an endless emperor aura that spread in all directions. Along with the breakthrough in his cultivation, his original body also possessed the strength of an immortal emperor under normal circumstances. Adding on the fact that the system's title mission this time had been successfully completed, Yi Xian instantly felt more relaxed than before. After adjusting his state of mind, he began to consider his next move. First of all, as the system's title leveled up to the 6th level of the Star Controller, the number of interstellar coordinates that Yi Xian could imprint in the void of the same universe had increased from 2 to 3. Previously, when he entered the space fragment of this great desolate land, Yi Xian had already imprinted 1 in the mulberry tree star field. This meant that now, he could imprint 2 more jump points. After pondering for a while, Yi Xian quickly made a decision. With a flash of his body, he immediately rushed toward the source nest star that he had just left. What was nurturing there was his doppelganger, and it was a doppelganger that possessed the strongest law of power. It could be said to be extremely important. After the great desolate world fully descended, it was very likely to become Yi Xian's greatest reliance. Hence, there was absolutely no room for error. Even though the surface of the source nest star was protected by a blood-red ripple, Yi Xian was still somewhat worried. It was very likely that he would frequently come to take a look in the future. Hence, it was imperative that he imprint an interstellar jump point here. Otherwise, once he left this place and returned to the Phoenix Blood Star Field, without an interstellar jump point, Yi Xian would have to travel extremely fast in the space for years to come and take a look. That would be too depressing. Xiao. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Yi Xian suddenly stopped moving. Without any hesitation, he waved his hand and separated a strand of his primordial spirit. According to the secret method of imprinting interstellar coordinates, he started to imprint. Time passed slowly. Unknowingly, another 3 days had passed. Perhaps because this was the highest level of the Great Desolate Land, Yi Xian's imprinting of the interstellar jump point was actually extremely slow this time. Chapter 4350. Following the successful branding of the second interstellar coordinate jump point in the void of the Great Desolate World fragment, Yi Xian was already able to easily travel between the surroundings of the source star that was nurturing his energy clone and the mulberry G star region that he had just entered. He could travel back and forth. With a thought, he could arrive there in an instant. However, after pondering for a while, he decided not to return yet. And it wasn't just Sangji Star Field or Phoenix Blood Star Field. Yi Xian didn't even plan to return to the Rising Sun Forbidden Land that he had entered through the Star Whirlpool 2 years ago. After all, 2 years had passed, and it was hard to say if the underworld furnace was still within the Forbidden Land. What's more, even though the underworld furnace's movements were important, Yi Xian had more important things to do within this space. Previously, according to the Headless Infant Corpse, the entire untainted world had fallen apart after the Primordial War. As the origin of the untainted world, the mysterious Mother Planet was protected by a mysterious will of the Mother Planet, bringing along an entire star area. It flew away and seemed to have entered the Great Wilderness. From Yi Xian's point of view, since he had already entered the Great Wilderness, he might as well make the best of it and not rush to return. He could use some time to search this vast and boundless Great Wilderness to see if he could find any clues. Perhaps he could find any clues to the mysterious Mother Planet. During this process, Yi Xian had 2 other important things to do. One was to deduce the perfect formula of the level 25 treasure pill. Currently, he had already consumed the level 23 pill and entered the Emperor level. After that, he had already deduced the perfect formula of the level 24 pill that could help him become an Emperor level Undying. After level 24, it would be the level 25 treasure pill that could help an Emperor level Undying enter the Universe Night level. The perfect formula of the level 24 pill was incredibly difficult to deduce, and the level 25 pill was even more so. Yi Xian needed more time to figure it out. The second thing was to kill an Emperor level Undying. Making the level 24 pill required at least 5 Emperor level blood essences. Compared to the Emperor level blood essences, emperor-level blood essences were harder to obtain, so Yi Xian had to prepare early. These two things could be done at the same time while searching for clues to the mother planet. Hence, staying in the great wilderness to search for clues to the mother planet would not be a waste of time even if there were no results. At this moment, when mentioning the clues to the mother planet, Yi Xian immediately thought of the Mosquito Emperor, who was also his sworn brother, Shui Ben. 2 years ago, with his help, Shui Ben's strength had skyrocketed, and his bloodline had undergone ancestral awakening. After he had become a pure-blooded desolate-era fierce mosquito, he had sensed the call of a mysterious power in the void. At that time, he couldn't confirm what the source of the call was. After all, the devil race's bloodline primordial ancestor had left with a few juniors and the desolate ancient fierce mosquito that followed him in order to find a way back to the ancestral star. To a certain extent, it was very likely that they were here, in this fragment of the great wilderness. If that was the case, the mysterious call that Shui Ben felt was very likely to come from the ancient mosquito that followed the origin ancestor of the demon race, which was his grandfather. However, there was also a possibility that the source of the call was from the mother planet, because even Shui Ben's grandfather had come from the mother planet. At that time, his bloodline had returned to its ancestral form, and he had become a pure-blooded ancient mosquito. It was possible that he could feel the weak presence of the mother planet in an instant. However, according to Shui Ben's intuition, the source of the call seemed to be extremely far away, and he couldn't get there in 3 to 5 years. Moreover, perhaps because his cultivation was still too weak, although he could feel the existence of the mysterious summoning power, it was intermittent and not very clear. If he had rushed over immediately, it would have been very difficult to pinpoint the direction. With a clear direction, the void was so vast. If he were to deviate even a little bit, the final result would undoubtedly be a huge mistake. Because of this, Yi Xian had no choice but to temporarily put this matter aside. Then, Shui Ben returned to the blood mosquito battle armor and went into seclusion to refine the energy stored in the charcoal maggot blood marrow. Counting the time, in the blink of an eye, more than 2 years had passed. If nothing unexpected happened, the large amount of charcoal maggot blood marrow energy that Shui Ben had devoured should have been completely refined, and his cultivation and strength should have soared again. And now, Yi Xian had entered the great wilderness void from the star vortex into the primordial void that was connected to it. It was very likely that it was where the mysterious mother planet was. In this way, if Shui Ben was called out, with the bloodline of the ancient mosquito that had completely returned to its ancestral form, it was very likely that he could sense the call even more clearly. Thinking of this, Yi Xian no longer hesitated. With a wave of his hand, he immediately called out Shui Ben from the blood mosquito battle armor. He turned into a blood-colored light and appeared in the void in front of him. In addition to Shui Ben, the elephant fox Sable, who had also been in seclusion for more than 2 years in the Shinong Cauldron, was also summoned by him. They both made breakthroughs. As the figures of Shui Ben and the elephant fox Sable appeared, Yi Xian's eyes flashed, and a look of surprise immediately appeared on his face. In front of him, Shui Ben appeared in the form of a human, while the elephant fox Sable appeared in the form of a 1-foot-long elephant fox Sable. However, the aura emitted from their bodies showed that they were both emperor-level undyings. 2 years ago, when Shui Ben entered the blood mosquito battle armor, he had just made a breakthrough to the marquis level. Unexpectedly, after 2 years of refining the large amount of charcoal maggot blood marrow energy that he had devoured, he actually made a breakthrough to the marquis level. And because of the ancestral form of the bloodline in his body, he had become a pure-blooded ancient mosquito. This kind of breakthrough didn't even require a level 22 treasure pill, which was really shocking. As for the elephant fox Sable, when he was in seclusion, he was already an early-stage marquis level undyings, and Yi Xian had already given him a level 22 treasure pill. Now, it seemed that this old guy had been relying on Yi Xian's large amount of pills for the past 2 years. First, he had raised his strength to the pinnacle of the 9th stage marquis level undyings. Then, he had swallowed the level 22 treasure pill and made a breakthrough to the marquis level undyings. At this moment, as Shui Ben and the elephant fox Sable appeared, Yi Xian exclaimed in surprise. Before he could ask again, Shui Ben's expression suddenly changed, revealing a look of shock. He turned his head towards the void in the distance to the right. He looked towards the end of the void. In his mouth, there was a sudden exclamation, hiss. What a strong summoning force, and there are actually two places, one strong and one weak. What is this place? Chapter 43:51. What's going on? The summoning power you sensed was actually two. As Shui Ben's words sounded out, Yi Xian's expression couldn't help but abruptly change. When he softly exclaimed, his face was already filled with shock. Then, as if he suddenly thought of something, he immediately became excited, almost cheering, and said, if that's really the case, we've gained a lot this time. The clues of the ancestral star are almost there. Yi Xian was almost certain about this. This was because he was already a peerless emperor, and he had activated the devil ape bloodline in his body, transforming into a Tenjiangtal violent star ape. His cultivation had reached the second-order peerless emperor. Even so, Yi Xian still didn't sense any abnormal summoning power. In fact, the same was true for Elephant Fox Martin, who had become an emperor. The Elephantine's treasure-seeking mouse bloodline was already extraordinary. Now that he had become a regal lord, his treasure-seeking mouse bloodline power had increased tremendously. However, he still did not sense any unusual summoning power. This was enough to show that this mysterious call could only be sensed by Shui Ben. Moreover, it was only after the bloodline in his body had undergone atavism and evolved into a true primordial mosquito that he suddenly caught the aura of this call. He was sure that this mysterious summoning power had something to do with the desolate fierce mosquito bloodline in Shui Ben's body. Therefore, the two strong and weak summoning powers he sensed now, apart from the demon man ancestor's follower, who was Shui Ben's grandfather, the other one must be the ancestral planet that Yi Xian was looking for. No, there was another possibility. The other summoning power could be Shui Ben's father, the original body of the Mad Mosquito Emperor. Yi Xian could only think of three possibilities related to the desolate fierce mosquito bloodline in Shui Ben's body. Now that he sensed the two summoning powers, one strong and one weak, it must be related to this. Thinking of this, Yi Xian no longer hesitated. He immediately turned his head to look at Shui Ben and anxiously asked, Big brother Shui Ben, you're already an undying emperor. Furthermore, you immediately had a strong feeling the moment you came out. Tell me, where are the two summoning powers? Let's go there immediately. The two summoning forces I sensed, one strong and one weak, one east and one west. Nodding, Shui Ben helplessly pointed to the left and right of his body, then spread his hands and continued, also, based on my senses, these two summoning forces just happen to be in different directions, and they both seem to be extremely far away, but, east. On the other side, this weaker sensing force seems to be slightly weaker. You think the close ones are weak? What's going on? Yi Xian frowned. After pondering for a moment, he immediately made a decision. He raised his hand and pointed towards the void in the east. Since the summoning power is closer, then let's start with it first. Let's go now. Let's go. After he finished speaking, Yi Xian's figure swayed as he waved his hand and sent out a boundless force that wrapped around the elephant fox mink and Shui Ben. In an instant, they transformed into a ray of light that shot towards the distant sky at an extremely fast speed, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian's second-order emperor cultivation was fully unleashed as he moved at an extremely fast speed. Very quickly, he followed this fixed direction and flew through the air for an entire 3 months. During this period, he even used void teleportation to lock the direction. The distance left behind in the void was simply an astronomical figure. It was so far away that it made people speechless. During these 3 months, Yi Xian encountered a few nests that gave birth to a chaos demon god, but he didn't pay attention to them. He even stopped temporarily to check if the demon god's seeds in these nests had already grown. They had already sprouted, so he was no longer interested. His entire mind was completely attracted by the source of the summoning power in the void ahead of him. He didn't even know where it was, and he didn't even know how far it was. Another 2 days passed. When Yi Xian started to feel impatient, he activated an invisible true essence that enveloped his entire body and maintained the same speed as him. Shui Ben, who was shooting forward, finally sent a divine sense sound transmission to Yi Xian. The weak summoning power was nearby, not far away. Without any hesitation, Yi Xian immediately stopped. With a wave of his hand, he removed the invisible true essence that wrapped around Xue Ben and the elephant fox Martin. Then, he fixed his gaze on Xue Ben. He stared at him in a daze, waiting quietly. The following. The originally very weak summoning power suddenly became much stronger after reaching this star field. It's definitely not far away. It should be, over there. After sensing for a while, Xue Ben turned his head and pointed in another direction. This made Yi Xian a little speechless. Fortunately, this direction was not in the opposite direction, but only a slight deviation. Otherwise, he would have begun to doubt Xue Ben's senses. Was it really reliable? Since they were already close, there was no need to hurry. This time, Yi Xian let Xue Ben lead the way while he pressed the elephant fox Martin on his right shoulder and followed closely behind Xue Ben. In this way, the three of them rushed forward for another day and a half. When Yi Xian felt a little impatient again, a huge star suddenly appeared in the distant void of the universe. It was clearly a place that gave birth to a chaos demon god. Source Nest Star. As this Source Nest Star appeared in the void of the universe in front of them, Xue Ben's eyes instantly lit up. It was obvious that his senses had become much stronger. His figure no longer hesitated, and with a raise of his speed, he shot straight towards the star in front of him. Looking at this situation, the weak summoning power he sensed was clearly related to the Source Nest Star in front of him. Although he didn't know what it was exactly, one thing was certain, and that was that this weak summoning power absolutely didn't belong to the Source Nest Star in front of him. This weak summoning power had nothing to do with the ancestral star. Although they were both stars, the ancestral star was completely different from this Source Nest Star. Whether it was the ancient star in Yi Xian's memory or the ancestral star that belonged to this side of the world, they were definitely not like this. When this thought flashed through his mind, Yi Xian's face was slightly startled. In an instant, a feeling of disappointment surged into his heart. However, this was only one of the two summoning powers after all, and it was the weaker one. Although it was not the ancestral star that he was looking for, at least there was another stronger summoning power. There was at least a 50% chance of finding the ancestral star. Chapter 43-52. The stars in the primordial void were divided into two types. One was an ordinary abandoned star, just like the outside world, and the other was a nesting star that gave birth to a chaotic demon god. As for the latter, there were only 3,000 of them. Now, there was already one, and it was even the strongest one. Yi Xian had taken it into his bag and planted a primordial spirit seed into it, nurturing his energy clone. These 3,000 nesting stars were basically the same as other ordinary abandoned stars except that they were particularly large. In other words, the atmosphere of a living star did not exist on the surface of a star in the primordial void. Because of this, even though Yi Xian, Xue Ben, and the elephant fox mink were still tens of thousands of kilometers away from this gigantic origin nest star, with their powerful cultivations, they were still able to see everything on the surface of the planet from such a distance away. He could see everything in detail. The surface of this star was the same as an ordinary abandoned star. Not even a plant could be seen, let alone a human figure. In other words, the summoning force that Xue Ben sensed was actually in the core of this nesting star. As this thought surfaced in his mind, Yi Xian's face could not help but turn a little green. His face was full of resentment, and he turned his head to look at Xue Ben, who was also a little dumbfounded. He said faintly, "Brother Xue Ben, are your senses reliable? This is clearly a nesting star that gives birth to a chaotic demon god. Moreover, the demon god seed in this nesting star has already sprouted. In other words, there can be no other living matter in this star except for the demon god seed in the core. I am absolutely sure of this." Yi Xian did not know about this before, but when he planted a primordial spirit seed in the nesting star that gave birth to the strongest power of the primordial void and occupied it, Yi Xian immediately knew about this matter. Once the demon god seed began to germinate in all the nesting stars that gave birth to the demon god seed, it was impossible for other living things to exist inside or outside the star. Even a small insect would appear in the ripples that enveloped the nesting star. In that instant, he perished. As if to prove his words, Yi Xian waved his hand and blasted out an invisible energy that shot towards the source nest star that was thousands of kilometers away. Boom! A huge roar sounded in an instant, and as the energy shot out, a spherical ripple appeared in the void of the universe about 1,000 miles above the source hive star, enveloping the entire source hive star in it. Look, let alone me, even an emperor or a universe knight wouldn't be able to break through this layer of ripples. Only when the chaos demon god is born in the core of the star is formed will it break through and be born, said Luo Feng. In other words, this source nest star had absolutely no latecomers. The mysterious summoning force that Xue Ben sensed was either wrong, or it was the chaos demon god that was born in the source nest star's core. From Yi Xian's words and behavior, he was obviously leaning towards the former. Both the elephant fox ferret and Xue Ben felt this. The two of them exchanged glances, then Xue Ben turned around to look at Yi Xian. With a solemn expression, he said, "Brother Yi Xian, my senses are definitely right. That weak summoning force is within this star. Just like what you said, it's in the core of the star at the center of the star. Furthermore, as the distance is close now, this originally extremely weak summoning power has become extremely strong. I even already know its origins and details." "What? Tell me." Upon hearing this, Yi Xian's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly urged, "What's the origin of the chaos demon god that's born in this source nest star?" Xue Ben's expression immediately became strange, and he stuttered. In the end, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. "He's my father. To be precise, he's my father's original body. This is a direct bloodline relationship, so close. At such a close distance, I can't be wrong." "Huh. It's actually the original body of the mad mosquito?" This result was far beyond Yi Xian's expectations. He had already mentally prepared himself. He thought that the guy who stole a source nest star like him was most likely Xue Ben's grandfather, the primordial beast that followed the primordial ancestor. Mosquito. But he didn't expect the truth to be like this. "Yes, it's him. And he's not like you before, just planting a wisp of primordial spirit as the demon god's seed of the source nest." Xue Ben nodded and continued with a serious face. "According to my senses, he completely disintegrated himself in the core of this source nest star. His body and primordial spirit were mixed together, turning into a demon god's seed to be born. Nurturing, it's like being reborn, living a second life. Crazy, absolutely crazy. No, this guy is crazy. The clone he left behind is the Mad Mosquito Emperor. His original body is obviously even crazier." Although the truth Xue Ben said was shocking, Yi Xian instantly believed it after hearing it. These source nest stars gave birth to chaos demon gods who controlled a primordial law. Obviously, it was not so easy to occupy the nest and seize it. At the very least, it was impossible for him to use ordinary methods of possession. Yi Xian had the devouring system, so he directly used the clone system attached to the system to separate a wisp of primordial spirit and completed all of this. But the same thing, if it was done by others, would definitely not be so simple. Even those who also had the devouring system in their bodies, such as the guys who lost to Yi Xian in the system competition task, although they also had the devouring system in their bodies, if they didn't activate the attached clone system like Yi Xian, obviously, they wouldn't be able to do it so easily. But the original body of the Mad Mosquito Emperor didn't want to let go of this great opportunity to steal the sky and live a second life. When the great wilderness world fully descended, he shook his body and turned into a powerful chaos demon god. Therefore, he chose such a method. His body was disintegrated, and his primordial spirit returned to the void. In the end, everything was mixed together, turning into a demon god's seed, occupying this source nest star. Chapter 43-53. After confirming that the demon god's seed in the source nest star in front of him was actually the original body of the Mad Mosquito Emperor, Yi Xian immediately exclaimed, and then thought of the original body of the Mosquito Butcher, and then diverted his thoughts, thinking of more. At this moment, as his words came out of his mouth, Xue Ben and the elephant fox Martin were obviously stunned. They looked at Yi Xian in a daze, and then turned their heads to look at the source nest star thousands of miles away. For a moment, the three of them did not continue to speak, but the shock in their hearts could only be described as earth-shattering. This pit was too deep. If it was really as Yi Xian guessed, then, among the 3,000 source nest stars in the primordial void, how many had been stolen? It was impossible to estimate. Even the original body of Yi Xian, the mad mosquito emperor, and the old devil mosquito butcher could think of this. How could some of the powerful figures and primordial masters who had survived from the collapse of the untainted land to the present? How could they not think of this? It seems that the reason why the netherworld furnace appeared in the rising forbidden land outside the star vortex of the primordial void is most likely related to these source nest stars. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian made a bolder guess again. Halfway through, his words came to an abrupt end, and his heart sank to the bottom of the valley. If that was the case, how many of the primordial masters and primordial masters of the primordial era, who were severely wounded in the great war that destroyed the entire untainted world years ago, sneaked into the primordial void and occupied the source of the chaos fiend gods? The source nest star. This, I am afraid, is simply impossible to estimate. Moreover, if there were no accidents, not only the top creatures of the primordial era in the primeval heavens I camp had done so, but most likely the top creatures of the primordial era in the headless infant corpse camp had done so as well. Yi Xian had previously thought that the golden divine dragon, primordial Yiksha, and other existences that had perished in the primordial war had most likely all been nurtured and hibernating on a certain source hive star. Even Hanba the corpse ancestor, the Nine Heavens mystic maiden, and other primordial beings who were only at the level of primordial great powers could live a second life. Why couldn't the primordial supremes who were stronger than them? As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Yi Xian was so shocked that his body trembled. If everything was as he had guessed, then, when the great wasteland world, which had already been shattered in the battle back then, reappeared and fully descended into the present world, the supreme experts of the primordial era who had already fallen in that battle would undoubtedly be Lulu. One after another, all of them appeared out of nowhere. He didn't know where Yi Xian was in that battle all those years ago. And this time, when the great wasteland world fully descended, Yi Xian, together with all the supreme experts of the two battalions, would appear at the same time and begin to compete. To him, what had once been a legend of the great wasteland had actually become a reality that was closely related to him in the near future. This change was too shocking, and no one could accept it if they were caught off guard. Forget it, this time it's a waste of effort. It's completely empty. After a moment of depression, Yi Xian quickly adjusted his mentality and sighed. Since we've already successfully occupied the nest and turned into a demon god to be nurtured on this source hive star, there will be a time when we meet in the future. As for now, it's useless for us to guard it. Anyway, there won't be any danger. Let's leave. After saying that, he waved his hand and stored Shui Ben and the elephant fox Martin into the space inside the Shinong cauldron in the undying world within his body. Then, he directly activated the interstellar coordinate jump ability. It took him more than 3 months to come here. Now that he had to go back to the source of the summoning force in another direction, Yi Xian did not want to spend more than 3 months to return to the star domain where he had set off from. He directly activated the interstellar coordinate jump ability and launched an interstellar jump, arriving there in an instant. Whoosh. As the system's ability was fully activated, an undetectable dim light flashed quietly. With a faint sound of breaking through the air, Yi Xian's figure disappeared in an instant. When he reappeared, he had already crossed the endless void and returned to the star domain where he, Shui Ben, and the elephant fox Martin had set off from more than 3 months ago. In other words, they were near the source hive star where Yi Xian's power doppelganger was nurturing. Yi Xian flew rapidly in the other direction that Shui Ben had pointed to earlier for another day before stopping again. With a wave of his hand, he released Shui Ben and the elephant fox Martin from the space inside the Shinong cauldron. He's actually back. So fast. Boss, you have a lot of secrets. The two of them were stunned. They had only been put into the Shinong cauldron by Yi Xian for a day, and they actually came out so quickly. After looking around, they suddenly realized that something was wrong. The void they were in now was actually different from the star domain they had set off from more than 3 months ago. It was too far away. Thus, under the shock of their hearts, they immediately cried out in alarm. Yi Xian did not explain further, nor did he need to explain. Who in the starry sky did not have their own secrets? Very quickly, the three of them set off once again. This time, the destination they were heading to was obviously even further away. With Yi Xian's strength as a second-order emperor, it would take him more than 3 months to reach the source of the weaker summoning force. According to Xue Ben's senses, the other source where the summoning power was stronger seemed to be even further away. If that was the case, it would take at least 4 to 5 months to reach their destination, or even longer. This was indeed the case. This time, Yi Xian still ignored everything along the way. Even when he saw a nesting star on the left and right side of the road, he did not stop because of it. Even so, the three of them continued to travel at top speed. After more than 5 months, they still had not reached the source of the summoning power. After 5 months of rapid travel, not only did Yi Xian and the elephant fox Martin become more and more impatient, even Xue Ben himself was the same. Just as the three of them were feeling restless, a ray of light suddenly appeared at the end of their line of sight. Moreover, as the three of them continued to move forward at top speed, a ray of light came from the end of the void in front of them. The light also became brighter and brighter. This was clearly the rhythm of a star in the void in front of them that could emit light and heat. Since there was a star, there must be a life star. Thinking of this, the three of them all became excited. Chapter 43-54. At this moment, it was because Yi Xian, Xue Ben, and the elephant fox mink were still very far away from it. Moreover, the primordial void, which was its background, was also a deep darkness. Therefore, it was only because of this that the Milky Way was completely covered in it. Therefore, the galaxy was displayed in front of Yi Xian and the other two. As far as the eye could see, there were countless stars in the entire Milky Way star field. There were also countless stars that could emit light and heat. With a rough estimate, its vastness was probably comparable to any of the 3 great starry skies of the current era. Staring at the Milky Way hanging in the starry sky, Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Unknowingly, the rise and fall of his chest became intense, and his breathing became incomparably rapid. He was carefully identifying the characteristics of the galaxies hanging in the vast Milky Way star field. Soon, Yi Xian's eyes became brighter and brighter, because he found some clues. He began to whisper with incomparable excitement, "That's the Large Magellanic Nebula, and the Small Magellanic Nebula. Right, that's Orion's arm, and the Sun, Jupiter, hiss. It's it. This is the Milky Way star field, the Milky Way star field in my memory." At the end of his sentence, Yi Xian let out a gasp of cold air. His body was so excited that it trembled slightly. He saw that not far from the sun, there was an aqua-blue star. That was the place where his life was born. It had been sealed in his memory for countless years, but now, he saw it again in the vast void of the universe. Moreover, in the legend of the primordial war, after the entire vast primordial great world collapsed, the mother planet and a huge star field around it were swept away by a mysterious will from the primordial void. Yi Xian was now in the primordial void. At the end of the void in front of him, there was another vast star field that looked like the Milky Way. Obviously, this vast star field that looked like the Milky Way was the mother planet and its surroundings that had been swept away back then. Star field. At this moment, Yi Xian could finally confirm that the legendary mysterious mother planet of the primordial era was actually the aqua-blue planet in his memory. However, Yi Xian was born on this planet a long time ago. Yes, even if he returned now, things would have already changed. At this moment, Yi Xian's heart was filled with endless emotions. After confirming that the Milky Way star was right in front of him, and that there was an aqua-blue planet that was closely related to him not far from the Orion's arm, he wanted to rush forward. Yi's eye was right at this moment. Just as Yi Xian was about to rush out, the elephantine lying in his right shoulder suddenly reminded him. Xue Ben did the same. With vigilance in his eyes, he pointed to the right and said, "Although the Milky Way star system in front of us is most likely the star field where the mother planet is located, in fact, the strong summoning force I sensed came from the right. The distant void on the side is definitely not within this Milky Way star system. In addition, the dark void that leads directly to this Milky Way star system doesn't seem to be very safe. Previously, all of Yi Xian's attention was attracted by the vast Milky Way star field at the end of his line of sight. He didn't notice anything else at all. At this moment, when he heard the Elephantine and Shui Ben's reminders at the same time, he was stunned for a moment before regaining his senses. He quickly extended his divine sense and deliberately concealed it. After a while, Yi Xian's face instantly darkened, because the situation was just as Shui Ben had said. First, it was not the surrounding areas in other directions of the Milky Way star field, but only the straight path leading to this Milky Way star field in front of him. The void of the universe would definitely not be peaceful. Since entering this primordial void, Yi Xian had not encountered any living creatures for about 3 years. But now, there were clearly a large number of life auras in front of him. There were so many of them that it gave people the feeling that they had encountered a forbidden space outside the primordial void, or a remnant star field. The situation is indeed a bit strange. There are so many life auras in a random direction, and all of them are very powerful. Yi Xian murmured in worry. From this situation, if nothing unexpected happens, the Milky Way star field at the end of the line of sight is most likely surrounded from all directions. There are countless starry sky experts, ferocious beasts, and remnant people waiting. Looking at it, a pack of wolves is waiting, a tiger is eyeing covetously. Moreover, this situation is probably not recent. On the side, Shui Ben nodded slightly, and continued Yi Xian's words. So many starry sky experts, ferocious beasts, and remnant people have obviously gathered after a long time. This is enough to explain one problem, and that is the Milky Way star field in front of us. Most likely, there is some kind of mysterious invisible force protecting this star field. Just like those nests, it is impossible to enter. Otherwise, with a pack of wolves surrounding us from all directions, how could those fellows who were eyeing us covetously have the patience to wait outside the entire time? Roar! As soon as Shui Ben finished speaking, an earth-shattering roar of a ferocious beast suddenly came from the end of the void in front of them. The 3 of them were shocked and turned their heads at the same time. They saw a huge ferocious beast, more than 1,000,000 feet in size, rushing out of an abandoned star. Screech! Immediately afterward, as if in response, an extremely sharp screech immediately sounded from an abandoned star in the other direction. A pitch-black ferocious bird with a wingspan of 1,000,000 feet flew out, shooting towards the huge ferocious beast that had just roared. These 2 fellows quickly fought each other. The aura of cultivation emitted from their bodies was actually that of the Emperor Immortal Realm. As the great battle unfolded, boundless strength chi instantly wreaked havoc in the dark void in front of them. One by one, the abandoned stars could not withstand the pressure of this level and exploded one after another. However, everything was far from over. After a few breaths, as the 2 ferocious birds and ferocious beasts fought in the void, in the other directions of the dark void at the end of their line of sight, there were violent roars and angry roars one after another, or there was no hint of concealment at all. There were powerful divine sense auras. There were at least dozens or hundreds of them. Moreover, the weakest of these auras were at the Marquis Immortal Realm. The King Realm was the mainstream, and there were also many Emperor Realm experts. Chapter 43-55. The situation is a bit complicated. Why don't you 2 hide in Shenong Cauldron for a while? Yi Xian's expression was solemn. He thought for a while, then turned to Shui Ben and Elephant Fox Martin and said, so many emperors and emperors popped up out of nowhere, and it seems that the void space ahead is filled with a huge amount of life force. Even the weakest of them is at the undying level. Such a situation wouldn't happen even in a top-tier forbidden land with an emperor guarding it outside the Hongmeng void space. That's why I suspect that this is a top-tier forbidden land, and there may be more than one. Maybe the entire Milky Way star field is filled with such powerful beings. If that's the case, I dare not say that there are universe masters and universe supremes, but at least universe knights here. Even though I have a way to escape from such beings, I can't guarantee that I'll be fine. If you 2 stay outside, the moment something happens, the chances of you escaping safely are almost 0. Yi Xian stopped talking, as Shui Ben and Elephant Fox Martin understood what he meant. They had been following Yi Xian for a while. Originally, they didn't know about the cultivation levels of emperors and what level of power the top-tier forbidden lands were. But now, after Yi Xian's explanation, the two of them were already clear about this. In this vast void space fragment of the universe, the forbidden lands were ruled by the beasts, and the remnant star field was ruled by the survivors of the primordial era. However, both the forbidden lands and the remnant star field could be divided into two categories according to the level of power. The first category, lords, emperors, and emperors ruled the small, medium, large, and top-tier forbidden lands. The second category, universe knights, universe masters, universe supremes, primordial great beings, and primordial supreme beings. They ruled 5 minor forbidden lands, which were divided into elementary, intermediate, advanced, pinnacle, and supreme. Forbidden lands. In the star field ahead, there were more than a dozen auras of emperors and space beasts. It was at least a beginner forbidden land, and there was at least one universe knight there. Yi Xian was only an emperor, and a universe knight was 2 realms higher than him. It was already extremely dangerous for him to sneak in alone. If he had 2 emperors by his side, the situation would be dire. What's more, the place in front of them was at least a beginner-level ultimate forbidden area, and it was only in one direction of the edge of the Milky Way star field. The entire Hongmeng void space was dark, and only the Milky Way star field emitted a large amount of light and heat. It was as bright as the Milky Way, so it must have attracted countless powerful beings from the Hongmeng void space. Hence, the other directions at the edge of the Milky Way star field was at least a beginner forbidden land, and it was possible that there were even stronger intermediate and advanced supreme forbidden lands. With Shui Ben and the elephant fox ferret only being titled emperors, there was nothing much for them to do in such a place. There was basically nothing for them to do here. As these thoughts flashed through their minds, Shui Ben and Elephant Fox Martin exchanged glances again. Elephant Fox Martin didn't say anything else and nodded silently. However, Shui Ben seemed to be deep in thought. Yi Xian wasn't in a hurry. He waved his hand and put Elephant Fox Martin into Shenong Cauldron, then waited quietly for his response. "Brother Yi Xian, I want to go there," Shui Ben said. After pondering for a while, Shui Ben's eyes flashed and the expression on his face gradually became firm. As he spoke, he raised his hand and pointed in the direction he had mentioned before. "I can feel that there is a very strong bloodline summoning force in that direction. If I'm not wrong, the source of this summoning force should be a pure-blooded desolate ancient fierce mosquito, and it's closely related to me. It's most likely my grandfather. Besides, his aura is very strong. I feel that it's far stronger than the auras of the dozens of emperor-level fierce beasts ahead. Perhaps it's the universe knight or even universe master you mentioned. If we can find him, it will be of great significance to our current situation. Hence, it's definitely worth a try. However, there are many life auras of fierce mosquito beasts in that direction. If that's a supreme forbidden land, there's an 80% chance that it's a gathering place of fierce mosquito beasts. If that's the case, it won't be dangerous for me to enter alone. However, you're not a fierce mosquito beast, so you can't enter at all." Speaking of this, Shui Ben paused for a moment before continuing. "We don't know much about the most powerful forbidden areas around this Milky Way star field. If you investigate alone, the progress is obviously a bit too slow. On the other hand, if I can find the source of the summoning force in this gathering place of the fierce mosquito beasts, it's very likely that I'll be able to get a lot of information easily. Hence, the two of us can start at the same time." "That makes sense," Shui Ben said. After hearing Shui Ben's words, Yi Xian subconsciously frowned. Although the current Shui Ben was already an undying emperor, compared to such a powerful forbidden area, his little bit of strength was simply not enough. Yi Xian was still worried about his safety. However, Shui Ben wasn't his subordinate. They were sworn brothers. Since Shui Ben had made his choice, the only thing Yi Xian could do was to respect his decision. Otherwise, the meaning of their relationship would change. Thinking of this, Yi Xian faintly sighed. He raised his hand and lightly patted Shui Ben's shoulder as he warned, "All right, brother Shui Ben, you just have to be careful. I hope that we can reunite again soon, Xiao." After he finished speaking, Yi Xian waved his hand and sent out a small spatial box filled with a large amount of top-grade cultivation resources. It slowly floated over and landed in Shui Ben's hands. "Take these cultivation resources with you. The resources in the primordial chaos void are scarce, so I still have more on me. Don't delay your progress because of these. If that's the case, then we'll part ways here. Brother Yi Xian, take care." Shui Ben didn't reject too much. He and Yi Xian didn't need this. After keeping the small space box in his hand, he patted Yi Xian's shoulder and didn't say anything else. He turned around and shot to the right, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Chapter 43-56. Roar. Screech, the earth-shattering roars of the ferocious beasts could be heard. The battle between the two emperor-level ferocious beasts was still going on. Yi Xian retracted his aura but did not conceal his body. He did not conceal his cultivation level either because there was no need to do so in this terrifying place. Two ferocious beasts that jumped out of nowhere were both emperor-level existences like him. From time to time, there would be Thearcrank divine senses scanning the area. Under such circumstances, his second-level emperor-level cultivation level was not very eye-catching. If he deliberately concealed his cultivation level to below that of a king-level emperor, the effect would be the opposite. Faced with the shocking battle between two emperor-level existences, even ordinary king-level ferocious beasts did not dare to show themselves, let alone marquis-level ferocious beasts. At this moment, most of them were hiding in their nests, trembling in fear. After traveling for about 200 to 300 million miles, the density of stars in the surrounding void suddenly increased tremendously. Looking around, every tens of millions of miles, there would be 1 or 2 stars. Although this was normal in the 3 main dimensions of the universe, in this primordial void, it was no different from a miracle. Yi Xian had been in this primordial void for many years. Basically, he had to travel in the same direction for more than half a month before he saw an abandoned star or a nesting star that nurtured a chaos demon god. However, in this place, with his second-level emperor-level cultivation level, there were at least tens of thousands of stars in the range of his divine senses. Moreover, from the trajectory of these stars, it was obvious that they did not belong here originally. If he was not mistaken, they must have been moved here by the horde of ferocious beasts with terrifying cultivation levels. When one reached the king level, they would have the terrifying means and ability to move stars in the universe. Of course, king-level experts could only move stars of average size. If they wanted to move huge stars, they would need to be at least an emperor. As for super-huge stars like the Chaos Demon God's nests, only king-level existences could move them. Even Yi Xian did not have the ability to do so now. Just from this point alone, one could see some problems. In the vast Milky Way at the end of his line of sight, there were more stars of all kinds. There were even a large number of stars that emitted light and heat, as well as stars that were full of life. That included the mysterious homeworld, which was also within the vast Milky Way. It was precisely this time that these powerful ferocious beasts of the stars were attracted here, but from how they spared no effort to move one star after another from the distant void to this place, making it an easy place to hibernate. This vast expanse was full of life. The boundless Milky Way star field was impossible to enter in a short period of time. Even Universe Knights and Universe Masters could only wait patiently outside the border of the Milky Way star domain, like other emperors and emperors, let alone emperors and Universe Knights. They could only bring their own nests and wait patiently outside the border of the Milky Way star domain. This was something that Yi Xian had already guessed before he entered the border of the Milky Way star domain. Now, as he carefully entered the border of the Milky Way star domain and went deep inside, everything that he saw proved his guess. It confirmed his guess. Out of caution, Yi Xian did not go straight into the area where the 2 emperor-level ferocious beasts of the stars were fighting. Instead, he deviated slightly and went diagonally to the left. Moreover, he deliberately avoided the void areas where 1 or 2 emperor-level divine senses extended from time to time, so as not to inadvertently disturb them and be targeted by some ferocious beast great emperor. That would be bad. With Yi Xian's current cultivation level and strength, he had to be careful. Therefore, he had no other choice but to immediately activate his interstellar coordinate jump ability to escape. As he went deeper, Yi Xian gradually gained a certain understanding of this forbidden area where countless powerful ferocious beasts of the stars gathered. Half a month later, when he went deep into the central region of this forbidden area, he unintentionally encountered a first-order emperor ferocious beast. It was actually the same bloodline form as Yi Xian's. It was also a ferocious ape. What made him even more pleasantly surprised was that this starry sky berserk ape was actually extremely hospitable. It suddenly met a fellow clansman, and one that was on par with him in terms of cultivation, so it was extremely happy. It actually took the initiative to pull Yi Xian to his lair planet, Chinchong. This was an excellent opportunity for Yi Xian to understand the situation of this forbidden area as soon as possible. He could even understand the situation of the other forbidden areas and star regions around the vast Milky Way. In fact, Yi Xian had been waiting for such an opportunity. However, he did not dare to act rashly and take the initiative to talk to some powerful ferocious beasts. He also did not dare to start hunting and searching in this environment where so many emperors and thearchs were around. Soul. Soon, Yi Xian took advantage of the situation and entered his lair with the ferocious ape. After arriving at the surface of this planet, Yi Xian discovered that there were actually a large number of weaker ferocious beasts on the planet. Most of them were from the ferocious ape clan, and there were even a dozen half-step emperor realm ferocious ape among them. This was the ferocious ape's bloodline descendant and its subordinate army. In order to open the conversation, Yi Xian generously took out some top-grade cultivation resources. They were all rare spirit fruits in the starry sky, as well as all kinds of spirit wines he had collected over a long time. This ferocious ape was obviously very good at this. It shrank its body to the size of an ordinary human, held the wine jar, and drank it down its throat. The two of them drank more than a dozen jars, and the atmosphere gradually became harmonious. Only then did the chatterbox open. 3 days later, when Yi Xian took his leave in a timely manner and politely gave him another 1,000 jars of spirit wine, he left. He was very interested in this forbidden area and the surrounding areas, including the vast Milky Way that emitted light and heat in the heart of the void in front of him. He already had a certain degree of understanding of the general situation. All in all, the situation was worrisome, and it made his heart heavy. Right now, the supreme forbidden area that Yi Xian was in was indeed an elementary supreme forbidden area. The strongest people guarding this place were 3 universe knights who had reached the middle stage of the universe realm. Other than these 3 universe knights, there were hundreds of emperors and hundreds of emperors in this beginner forbidden area. Their powers were so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. And in this vast beginner forbidden area, those who were qualified to move about in the void usually had to be at least undying level ferocious beasts. Chapter 43-57. This was only one of the elementary supreme forbidden areas. In fact, there were more than a dozen powers surrounding this vast Milky Way. Among the gathering places of these powers, there were supreme forbidden areas where space beasts gathered and supreme star areas where the survivors of the primordial era were active. Among the 2 most powerful places, one was an intermediate forbidden area where there were terrifying beasts at the level of a universe master, and the other was a star area where there were 2 universe masters at the level of a primordial era survivor. These dozen or so large forces divided up the surrounding void next to the vast Milky Way, and in the gap between these dozen or so large forces, as well as the area behind them, there were a large number of small forces, and even some scattered beasts like rogue cultivators. And the survivors of the primordial era. The reason why these powerful beasts and survivors gathered here was to wait for the opportunity to enter the vast Milky Way star area in front of them. The entire Milky Way star area was protected by an invisible force field, which was suspected to be related to the dark primordial void space and was of a very high level. A long time ago, several powerful universe masters joined forces and tried to force their way in. In the end, not only did they not succeed, but they also triggered a backlash from the force field, which killed 2 universe masters on the spot. Since then, no one dared to try it again, fearing that they might get themselves killed. However, there were two powerful universe masters in the tribe of the survivors, and a powerful ferocious beast with a special bloodline who was good at the path of deduction started to deduce together. The final conclusion was that the Milky Way star area was not fully open yet, but that moment was not far away. However, the specific time had not been deduced. According to Yi Xian's speculation, the time when the layer of the invisible primordial void space that enveloped the Milky Way star area was fully open should be when the primordial era fully arrived, or some time after that. At that time, once this layer of invisible primordial void space was fully open, the powerful beasts and survivors outside the Milky Way star area would undoubtedly immediately rush in to plunder resources, occupy the ancestral star, and seize the great luck of this round of the primordial era. This made Yi Xian feel extremely heavy on his shoulders, and there was a sense of urgency. After all, he was only at the first level of Emperor, which was 2 full realms away from becoming a Universe Knight, not to mention the 5 Knights, who were only the 5 most powerful ones. He was the first to break through to the next realm. Besides that, Yi Xian also obtained another piece of news from the violent star ape. Half a year ago, a netherworld furnace had appeared at the edge of another elementary level forbidden area in the distance. However, when the news spread and a universe master rushed over to collect it, the dark cauldron, which was suspected to be a primordial treasure from the primordial age, suddenly disappeared without a trace. This news shocked Yi Xian. He had originally thought that the netherworld cauldron was still in the forbidden land of rising sun outside the small star vortex in the primordial chaos void. But now, it seemed that this was just his wishful thinking. A few years had already passed, and the netherworld furnace had clearly entered this primordial void through some sort of channel. Based on this, it was clear that the reason it had come to the forbidden land of rising sun was to enter the primordial void. Their ultimate goal was undoubtedly the mysterious ancestral star in the vast Milky Way ahead. After receiving this news, Yi Xian was shocked. However, after thinking about it, he felt less uneasy. After all, although the Milky Way star domain, where the ancestral star was located, had been exposed, and even the netherworld furnace had found its way here, the entire Milky Way star domain was still protected by an invisible primordial chaos force field. If there were no accidents, the barren heaven path green eyes would not be able to force their way in. As a result, the Milky Way star region and the ancestral star would be safe before the arrival of the Great Change. Yi Xian could completely calm his heart and hibernate in the primordial chaos void. At the same time, he would raise his own cultivation and secretly increase the overall combat strength of his faction. Once he made up his mind, he immediately turned around and did not continue forward. The deeper he went, the more Thear-cranked formidable martial artists' divine senses appeared in the spatial zone. The frequency of them appearing was increasing. If he continued to move forward, the chances of accidents happening would increase greatly. Anyway, he had already obtained the results he wanted to investigate. At this time, he should withdraw and leave this primary level forbidden area. He should go to the star domains where the small factions and scattered great beings were gathered. Or, he could go to the void further behind. Half a month later, Yi Xian retreated from this primary level forbidden area and returned to the void where Shui Ben had left. However, he did not stay there. Instead, he continued to retreat. What he wanted now was to find a star to lay low in. The Source Nest star was the best choice. Yi Xian used the devouring system in his body to deduce. In the end, he came to a conclusion. If the core energy of the Source Nest star that was used to nurture the Chaos Demon Gods was destroyed, then this Source Nest star would be destroyed. The 3,000 Chaos Demon Gods that would appear in the future would be one less Chaos Demon God. Yi Xian planned to do this now. He decided to find a Source Nest star where the Demon God seed had yet to germinate and kill the Demon God seed. Then, he would use the huge amount of energy that was used to nurture this Demon God seed to nurture his own subordinates. His subordinates' army. This was definitely a waste of God's gift. There were not many nests of chaos in the primordial void, and they were very difficult to find. Even if they were found, it was very likely that the Demon God seed in the star core had already sprouted, and it was impossible to enter. It could be said that it was extremely difficult to find a nesting star that contained a demon god's seed that had yet to germinate. It was definitely a small probability event. Yi Xian had been wandering around the primordial chaos void for a few years, and there was also the elephant fox ferret. With the help of the devouring system in his body, he had only encountered a few nests of chaos. If other powerful beasts or remnant experts were to find such a profitable source nest star, and at the same time, they had the ability to steal the sky and replace it, no matter who it was, they would consider themselves and replace the demon god's seed in the star core. For example, the true body of the Mad Mosquito Emperor had done this. Only Yi Xian would come up with such a crazy plan. He would use a nest of chaos that was used to nurture chaos demon gods as a waste of God's gift to increase the battle strength of his subordinates' army. In the following time, he once again began his aimless journey in the void. His only goal was to find a source nest star where the demon god's seed had yet to germinate. This search went on for half a year in the blink of an eye, but he still didn't find anything. Just as Yi Xian was feeling a little impatient and was wondering if he should take a step back and use an ordinary abandoned star as his base camp. Just as he was about to set up camp and settle down for the time being, in a remote star domain at the end of his line of sight, he suddenly saw something. Chapter 43-58. After more than half a year of painstaking searching, Yi Xian finally found another origin nest star that had yet to germinate with the demon god's seed within it. This harvest was too rare, and it was completely the result of luck. Yi Xian was afraid that something unexpected would happen if he delayed any longer. Without any hesitation, his figure flashed and shot forward at an extremely fast speed. Half a day later, the huge nest star was already right in front of him. Yi Xian's figure flashed and landed directly on the surface of the star, and immediately rushed towards the core area deep underground. After a while, he entered the core area. Due to the incomparably large size of the origin nest star, even its inner core was extremely vast, about the same diameter as an ordinary star. The entire core was filled with energy crystals of various colors. It was not a simple matter to nurture a chaos demon god. Not only were there many kinds of laws and energies, but they were also so complicated that it made one's hair stand on end. The nurturing of life was originally the most profound thing in the universe. It was a profound matter. In the center of these countless energy crystals, there was a blood-green prismatic crystal. It was about 10 feet tall, and there was a faint wisp of obscure vitality emanating from it. In the entire huge origin nest star, whether it was the surface of the star outside or the core of the hinterland where Yi Xian was currently located, only this blood-green prismatic crystal had a faint wisp of vitality. Without a doubt, the chaos demon god born by this origin nest star was within this blood-green prismatic crystal. However, it could not be considered a complete life form yet, because the seed had yet to germinate, and it did not have the chance to germinate. Yes. Whoosh. With a flash of cold light in his eyes, Yi Xian waved his hand and shot out an invisible force. In the blink of an eye, the blood-green prismatic crystal was shattered into pieces, turning into a large piece of blood-green crystal fragments that scattered on the ground. Almost at the same time, the faintly discernible aura of vitality completely disappeared and could no longer be sensed. This seemingly simple move shattered the demon god seed nurtured by this origin nest star. At this point, the entire star was half crippled. Even if it was found again, because the blood-green prismatic crystal that nurtured the demon god's seed had already shattered. It was impossible for him to steal the sky and change the sun, use this place to achieve himself, live a second life, and transform into a chaos demon god. Although it was a pity, this was the result that Yi Xian wanted. Whoosh! With a wave of his hand, Yi Xian shot out a ray of light. It was the giant life fortress of the Long Yi. Last time, Yi Xian had already found an energy that was suitable for the rapid transformation and evolution of the giant life fortress. Moreover, it was very large, so he directly threw all of it into the second floor of the giant life fortress, filling it to the brim. Calm. After such a long time, the giant life fortress had clearly become a size larger. It was now the size of 2 galactic battleships, but the growth of the giant life fortress was far from over. It was still in a slow but continuous process of transformation and growth. The reason why he brought out the life cork was because this was the core of a source hive star. The energy in the environment was much denser, and it was beneficial to the transformation and evolution of the world worm. On the other hand, Yi Xian had already planned to turn this source nest star into his base camp in the primordial chaos star domain. Right now, he had to set up camp in the star core, so he needed a place to stay. Of course, the more important reason was that Gui Hai Yidao, Zhang Qingyu, Ying Tai, and 10,000 other demon soldiers were cultivating in seclusion inside the giant life fortress of the Long Yi. Taking out the great fortress of life and setting up camp in the core of this source hive star like the seat of a demon god, the 10,000 trusted demon scouts who were cultivating in seclusion could also walk out of the great fortress at any time and absorb the crystal energy that could be seen everywhere in the core. Quantity. After doing all of this, Yi Xian pondered for a moment, then quickly waved his hand again. This time, the sound of something tearing through the air rang out continuously. After landing on the ground, they instantly transformed into ferocious beasts of different sizes. This time, when Yi Xian left the forbidden land of phoenix blood with the green ox and the elephant fox marten, apart from the 10,000 demon soldiers cultivating in seclusion in the giant life fortress of the Long Yi, he only brought along the 4 great kinetic races in the 4-star battle towers, as well as the Shinong Cauldron. The 8 great guardian deities, the flying centipede, and old monster Inji. The entire nomadic army in space, including the ferocious beast army under the green ox, the captive army, and the remnant army, were all left in the forbidden land of phoenix blood to recuperate and develop quietly. If nothing unexpected happened, after that old fellow green ox returned, once the green ox returned, he would have replaced Yi Xian as the acting leader of the entire nomadic army. However, before the green ox left, there was still an army of 10 million ferocious beasts left in the hands of Yi Xian. Back in the behemoth forest, Yi Xian started a massacre. The bloody massacre lasted for half a day. In the end, more than 80% of the countless ferocious beasts in the Forbidden Land were killed. Only 15% of the ferocious beasts were left alive under the green ox's deliberate selection. He kept the remaining ferocious beasts and kept them under his command. When he returned to the Phoenix Blood Star region in the future, he would be incorporated into the ferocious beast army under the green ox. There were more than 10 million ferocious beasts left alive, including 10 marquee undyings and close to 100 normal undyings. As the green ox returned to the forbidden land of Phoenix Blood alone, these 10 million ferocious beasts were kept in the Shinong Cauldron by Yi Xian. At this moment, he waved his hand and summoned these 10 million ferocious beasts. Along with them were the 8 great guardian deities, the flying centipede, and old monster Silver G. After all the ferocious beasts were summoned, they stood in a large group in the star core. All of them were extremely quiet. They were intimidated by the emperor aura that permeated Yi Xian's body. They did not even dare to breathe. However, the flying centipede, old monster Silver G, and the 8 great guardian deities were not so obedient. As soon as they saw Yi Xian, these 10 fellows immediately gathered with smiles on their faces. The last time they saw these fellows in the Shinong Cauldron was a few years ago. Back then, the flying centipede was a marquee undyings rank 2 great guardian deities. After the 8 great guardian deities broke through to the undyings rank 2 great guardian deities, they had 2 more breakthroughs. Their strength was at the undyings rank. Even old monster Silver G had reached the undyings rank 7 great guardian deities. After 2 more breakthroughs, he would need to consume a level 21 elixir to break through to the marquee rank 2 great guardian deities. Now, after a few years, the flying centipede had become a marquee rank 9 great perfection undyings. Old monster Silver G had also broken through the normal undyings rank 2 great guardian deities. Chapter 43-59. Boss, if you don't show up soon, we'll be worried to death. Yes, yes, yes. Of the 8 of us, the last one to reach the perfect level 9 undying realm did so half a year ago. Yet, we haven't had a level 21 treasure pill. We haven't been able to break through. We're almost at a loss. This energy, boss, you've become an emperor? Impressive, bro. It's only been a few years and you've already become an emperor. It's so fast that it makes me speechless. Don't talk so much. Boss, give me the supreme pill first. It's already time for me to break through, but I don't have a level 21 supreme pill. I've failed several times, and the accumulated energy in my body is about to explode. When they saw Yi Xian, the 8 great guardian deities were pleasantly surprised. Immediately after, they all had long faces as they bitterly moved closer to Yi Xian. For a moment, they went back and forth, complaining to each other. Xiao. Xiao xiao xiao. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled bitterly, yet he felt awkward. Without saying much, he waved his hand and gave the pills away. This time, not only did the 8 receive a level 21 treasure pill for breaking through to the official level, they even received a level 21 treasure pill to help them break through to the official level. Yi Xian had also given them the level 22 treasure pills to help them break through to the emperor level. Of course, this included the flying centipede and old monster Enji. Not only did Yi Xian give these 2 old fellows a level 22 regal pill, he also gave each of them a level 23 regal pill that was used to break through to the emperor realm. As a result, Yi Xian only had 1 level 23 emperor treasure pill left. He needed to think of a way to hunt king-ranked fierce beasts and refine the king-ranked blood essence to refine the level 23 emperor treasure pill. However, there were still quite a number of level 22 emperor treasure pills, a total of 30 of them. There were even more level 21 emperor treasure pills, with over 500 left. They wouldn't be in a rush for the time being. Boss, thank you. Where is this? The energy here is so dense. Why do you care so much? This is the boss's business, who are you to butt in? Yes, our cultivation levels are still too weak, we have to hurry back. With the treasure pills in hand, these 10 fellows immediately became restless. Their faces were filled with excitement as they urged Yi Xian to immediately keep them in the Shen Nong cauldron. It was clear that he was racing against time to begin his closed-door training again. Don't worry, there's no need for you all to return to the Shen Nong cauldron for now. It's the same for you all to break through in this star core. In the future, this will be our base, and we won't be leaving anytime soon. Speaking until this point, Yi Xian turned around and glanced at the huge army of beasts. He waved his hand, the 10 million beasts in the army, and the 10 million beasts in the army. Finally, he looked at the group of higher-ups and ordered, "You all heard what I said just now. From now on, this will be our base. This is a huge star, the diameter of the star core is extremely vast. Even if there are 100 times more people, it can still fit inside. Also, this space is filled with all sorts of top-grade energy crystals. This Star Master doesn't have any restrictions. If you need them, you can use them as you wish. This includes the various levels of precious pills that can be used to break through the bottleneck of a major realm. This Star Master has opened up the supply. When you reach the great circle of the 9th step of a major realm, you can directly apply for them one by one. When the time comes, they will naturally be issued. The only requirement is for everyone to quickly raise your strength as much as possible. Because the great calamity is coming, if your strength is too weak, you won't have a chance to survive. Other than this star core, the surface of the star outside can also be moved around freely. However, this space is very dangerous, and there are very few stars. Even abandoned stars are rare, and there aren't many resources. Hence, if you want to leave the star for a stroll, you won't be too far away. Also, the 10 million beast army is divided into 10 small armies, each of which is 1 million. Each army is led by 1 official undying and 10 normal undyings. They will take turns to patrol the surface of the planet. The moment there's any movement in the space outside the planet, we'll be the first to report. If anything happens, time will tell. At this point, Yi Xian turned to Flying Centipede, Old Monster Enji, and the 8 Great Vajra. Each of you will be in charge of one of the 10 patrol armies, and you will take turns to patrol the surface of the star. The rotation period is 1 month. After that, Yi Xian didn't say anything else and shot toward the Long Yi Hao Life Fortress at the center of the star core. This Star Master is in seclusion on the top floor of the fortress. If you have something important to report, enter the fortress and find the demon scouts. They will naturally find a way to wake me up. Yi Xian found a nesting star in the primordial space, destroyed the demon god's seed in the core of the star, and took over the nesting star as though it was a waste of natural resources. He settled down and set up camp on this nesting star. At the same time, the three main planes of the universe that he had been away from for a long time were also in turmoil. Yi Xian had left. To be more precise, it was the battleship army formed by the major forces of the three main planes of the universe that left and entered the mysterious void crack in the Shadow Devil star region of the second universe. It had been more than 10 years since the exploration of the mysterious void crack began. Over the past 10 years, all the major forces of the three main planes of the universe and countless great beings of the universe had been paying close attention to this void crack in the Shadow Devil star region of the second universe. Everyone was anxiously waiting, hoping that a battleship or even a great being of the universe would walk out of this void crack. If that was the case, they would at least be able to understand the situation inside this void crack. They would also know the general situation of the countless great beings of the universe from the three main planes that had entered this void crack more than 10 years ago. Unfortunately, such a simple expectation was like an extravagant hope. Until now, thousands of days and nights had passed, but it had yet to come true. Over the past 10 years, the major forces of the three main planes had sent battleship legions of various sizes, or teams of great beings of the universe, into this void crack one after another. Before entering, they had specifically instructed that no matter what the situation inside was, no matter what, they should rush back as soon as possible and report back the news and intelligence. However, all the battleship legions and teams of great beings that had entered the void crack over the past 10 years, without exception, none of them had returned. This was not normal, and it was strange. It made the major forces of the three main planes of the universe feel like they were sitting on pins and needles. Under such circumstances, the major forces and races of the three main planes of the universe had long lost all interest in internal strife. They were all focused on one thing. Chapter 4360. Back then, the vanguard team sent by the various races in the second universe was the first army to enter this void fissure. Not long after, the fleets of the top forces and races from the three major dimensions that had just entered formed the second army. This time, the allied army formed by the top races and factions of the three major planes was clearly going to be the third batch of large armies to enter the spatial rift. After reaching a consensus, the top forces and races in the three dimensions immediately assembled their armies. In less than a month, they had gathered outside the mysterious void fissure in the domain of Shadow Devil in the second universe. Although it was called a joint army, in fact, the entire terrifying army, which had an uncountable number of battleships, was still divided into three large camps. In the first universe, there was still no news from the Tianji clan. The countless ferocious beasts in the Cage Star Zone, which replaced the Demon Emperor Star Zone, did not participate in this expedition. No one knew how the primordial porcupine and the primordial turtle were doing. The entire demon race, which had hidden somewhere after the collapse of the Demon Emperor Star, did not appear this time. However, the other original slave races in the first universe were all involved, including the giant ferocious race, the void rats, and the hell ants, which had allied with Yi Xian. They formed a huge starship army outside the void fissure in the domain of Shadow Devil. They occupied a large part of the starry sky. In the second universe, none of the major races were absent. The top 10 races, led by the Blood Dragon race, were still the leaders. However, the Nether Turtle race, which had long been sealed, was the only exception. This time, the Nether Turtle race still did not participate in the third expedition. As for the third universe, all the major and minor forces had gathered, but the backbone was still the 10,000 Luo Federation and the two major camps of the human race, namely the 10,000 Luo Celestial Palace and the Immortal Dynasty. Among them, Yi Xian, the master of the Sky River Star, had also sent a huge fleet to participate. The outside world did not know that this fleet in name of the Sky River Star actually included the Victor's Legion that Yi Xian had left in Triumph City. This time, the Victorious Return Legion and the Heavenly River Legion were almost in full strength, led by Mosquito Butcher. It was as if they were migrating, and from the looks of it, they had no intention of returning. Back then, the first vanguard army sent by the various races in the second universe to enter this void fissure was led by the immortal old monsters. Behind them was the second punitive expedition army, which was formed by the various races and powers of the three planes. The strongest people guarding it were the marquee undyings of the various races, and there weren't many of them. Right now, a small portion of them had already been reduced to. Yi Xian's captives entered the captive council and became the upper echelons of the council. And this time, not only did the third expedition army have more battleships than the second, the strongest members of the upper echelons were said to be emperors instead of emperors. Of them. After all, there had been no news of the previous two expeditionary armies, including the large and small legions and starry sky powerhouses that had been sent over in the past 10 years. This situation had long caused the top forces of the three major planes to be worried. This time, they would either not make a move. Once they made a move, they would not be so careless like the previous two times. There were even rumors that the strongest person in this terrifying joint army was not an immortal emperor, but an immortal emperor, who was even more powerful than an immortal emperor. Existence, although this was only a rumor, and its authenticity had yet to be verified, most of the immortal emperors were inclined to believe that this rumor was true. After all, even the slave races in the first universe, which had been enslaved by the Tianji clan, had immortal emperors, and immortal emperors in their core ancestral lands. Needless to say, the top 10 of the second universe even had bloodline primordial ancestors of the primordial era sleeping in their ancestral lands. As for the Myriad Sift Federation, although it hadn't been established as long as these ancient races, it had been the only faction capable of contending against the Heaven's legacy race. It had even included the two major factions of the human race. With endless resources, the Myriad Luo Federation might have been able to recruit immortal emperors. There was no need to mention the two camps of the human race, the 10 Absolute Heavenly Palace and the Immortal Dynasty. Among the three major planes, the human race had always been the most mysterious and powerful force. No one knew how strong the human race was, or how deep the water was. In fact, even the Heavenly Fate race, which had almost dominated the three Great Plains, was stopped because of the appearance of the Myriad Sifting Federation. But, it was only because of a technological pioneer of the human race that it had created. Thus, it was obvious that this was the case. It could be said that the strength of the third expedition army formed by the countless forces and clans in the three major planes had exceeded the limit of what could be described as outrageous. Not only were there countless battleships and immortal emperors, but there were also many immortal emperors in charge. There was at least a 60% chance that there were immortal emperors, or even immortal emperors. Such a terrifying army was definitely unprecedented in the three major planes of the starry skies. Even when the Heaven's Legacy race appeared out of nowhere and almost took over all three major planes and shook the entire universe, there had never been an army of this scale or a top-notch expert of this level. It was precisely because of this that the various starry sky powerhouses who participated in this expedition army were almost full of confidence for this third expedition. In their opinion, even if there was really something behind this mysterious void crack that made them feel fearful, they would not be able to withstand it. It was unimaginably terrifying. In the face of such an unprecedentedly powerful army, this unknown terror would be completely destroyed in a short period of time, disintegrating like ice. Hong. Hong Long Long, outside the mysterious spatial rift in the Shadow Devil star zone of Universe 2, the roar of a kinetic cabin suddenly rang out. Then, like dominoes falling, the roar of a kinetic cabin being fully activated was followed by a series of rumbling noises similar to that of a kinetic cabin being fully activated. Then, one after another, it rang out continuously. The entire boundless void seemed to tremble slightly at this moment, and the momentum could be described as sweeping across the sky. As these countless thunderous roars sounded, the countless starry sky battleships that were densely spread out to the end of the void outside the mysterious crack all slowly moved forward one after another from this moment on. They entered the void fissure. Chapter 4361. The Second Universe. After an entire month, the third expedition army formed by the various races and top-tier powers of the three dimensions finally entered the spatial rift in the Shadow Devil star zone. The second universe, which had always been bustling with noise and excitement, was now particularly quiet. This time, the various races of the second universe had mobilized a large number of battleships and a large number of great beings. Even some of the bloodline ancestors who had been sleeping in the ancestral lands of the various races for a long time had been awakened and had quietly joined the expedition army. It could be said that at least half of the overall strength of the various races of the second universe had been taken away, which was definitely unprecedented. It made the entire second universe seem empty. It had never been so cold and cheerless before. What no one knew was that, while the entire second universe was in this rare state of desolation, the Dark Turtle clan, which had always been extremely quiet and had entered the state of being a sealed race, suddenly became active. All these years, the Dark Turtle Star Zone had been deathly silent. In the deepest region of the Dark Turtle Star Zone, a black dark turtle that was as huge as a star suddenly appeared at the end of the spatial rift. This dark turtle was the leader of the Dark Turtle clan that Yi Xian had seen before. Only now did he reveal his true strength. He was an emperor-level undying. As the leader of the Dark Turtle clan showed up, numerous enormous figures slowly rushed out of the black hole in the deepest region of the Dark Turtle Star Zone. They were all pitch-black dark turtles. There were so many of them that it was impossible to count them. Among them, the one with the most powerful aura had surpassed that of an emperor-level undying. It was at least at the universe night level. Even the aura that emanated from its enormous body revealed a strong sense of decay. There was even more than one dark turtle with such an aura in its body. The strength of the entire Dark Turtle clan could be seen from this. However, even though these terrifying dark turtles, who were at least universe knights and most likely universe masters and universe supremes, didn't do anything after rushing out of the mysterious black hole in the deepest region of the Dark Turtle Star Zone, they didn't do anything else. Instead, it continued to hover in midair like all of the other infernal turtles in the surrounding area. He seemed to be waiting for something. As he looked around, he saw that the nether turtles in the void had already filled more than half of the nether turtle star field. However, all of them were very quiet and had concealed their auras. If he hadn't seen them with his own eyes, he probably wouldn't have heard them even if he passed by the nether turtle star field. What's the commotion? I can't capture any energy aura, buzz. Finally, after half a day, an extremely low buzzing sound suddenly came from the black hole. It sounded as if the void in the black hole was trembling. Then, with a flash of blood light, a huge black shadow that was even bigger than the black hole struggled to rush out of the black hole. Its body was much bigger than the biggest star, and its whole body was covered in blood patterns. It gave off an extremely simple and unadorned feeling. It was none other than the giant void tortoise that Yi Xian had rescued from the mysterious void behind the netherworld cauldron with the headless infant corpse. In fact, even this size was the result of its deliberately shrinking size. However, this degree of shrinking was obviously not enough. Therefore, as this giant dark turtle struggled to rush out of the black hole, its body shrank again at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, it was almost the size of an ordinary star. Moo! The giant void tortoise lowered its head to look at its own body. It seemed to be quite dissatisfied. It raised its head and let out a soft moo. Then, it suddenly opened its mouth and inhaled, "Shio," into its stomach. Even the few ancient dark turtles that were suspected to be universe knights, universe masters, and even universe supremes were all the same. After doing all this, the void giant tortoise suddenly shook its head. As a dark light shot out, the black hole that its body had just squeezed out immediately cracked open a huge crack from the center. Then, the void giant tortoise's figure leaped and directly rushed out. It entered and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The interior of this crack was incomparably dark, and it was even dimmer than an ordinary black hole in the universe. The aura that faintly seeped out from it was actually somewhat similar to the primordial chaos star region that Yi Xian was currently in the cage star field that replaced the demon emperor star field in the first universe. It had been almost 15 years since Yi Xian sent the primordial porcupine, the primordial hairy tortoise, and the entire army of ferocious beasts that were the root of all evil, led by the two old men, into the cage star field. Over the past dozen years, the entire cage star field had been erupting with fierce and bloody battles at every moment. The caged beasts that originally resided in the cage star field fought against the great beings and space beasts that entered later, as well as the army of ferocious beasts that were the root of all evil, led by the primordial porcupine and the primordial hairy tortoise. Rest. Over the past dozen years, countless great beings and scattered space beasts entered the caged star field for the sake of benefits and resources. However, in reality, the number of ferocious beasts in the caged star field was decreasing. All of this was like raising a wine cup. At the cost of countless lives, the strength of the survivors was rapidly increasing. Until now, there were very few great beings of the human race in the caged star field, and the caged beasts that were originally there were almost extinct. The two biggest powers in the caged star field were the army of ferocious beasts that came from the root of all evil, and the other was the army of ferocious beasts. The other was the union of the caged beasts and the scattered ferocious beasts that entered later. Between the two, the final battle was erupting, and the location of the final battle was on a huge broken continent in the center of the caged star field. After more than a dozen years of development, the primordial porcupine and the primordial hairy tortoise already had the strength of an emperor. The speed at which their bloodlines rose was simply outrageous. The army of ferocious beasts under the two of them now numbered more than 50 million. Among them, there were more than a dozen emperors, and close to 100 emperors. Even the nomadic army under Yi Xian was probably not their match. In comparison, the other side that was fighting against the army of ferocious beasts from the root of all evil had 2 emperors, but they were both in the initial stage of the emperors. Compared to the primordial porcupine and the primordial hairy tortoise, who were already in the middle stage of this realm, there was an obvious difference. Chapter 43-62. After an entire month, the battle was nearing its end. All the beasts from the enemy camp had been wiped out, only the 2 emperors were still making their final struggle. However, there was no suspense in their final outcome. Because these 2 emperor-level caged beasts were already riddled with injuries. It was only a matter of time before they were finally killed. Howl. Li, rumble. As the despair grew, the 2 emperors seemed to have agreed to roar and howl unwillingly. Seeing this, the immemorial porcupine and tortoise's expressions changed. With a tacit understanding, they immediately retreated. After a few breaths of time, an earth-shattering explosion resounded. Knowing that they were going to die, the 2 terrifying emperors self-destructed, destroying half of the continent. The terrifying energy wreaked havoc in the space. In a single space. The crack was right where the 2 emperors were standing. Within the crack was incomparably dark. The energy that leaked out was actually the same as the primordial space that Yi Xian was in, exactly the same. Old tortoise, I feel a kind of summoning. Looking at the void crack in astonishment, the primordial porcupine was stunned for a moment. Finally, he turned his head to look at the primordial tortoise on his back and said in a consulting tone, "There are no caged beasts here, and the caged star is sealed. The formless light of the domain is most likely being monitored by the primeval heaven's eye. It'll be hard for us to leave, why not? Let's go, there's no point in staying here." "I have a very strong feeling." The green-furred tortoise nodded and immediately expressed his agreement. "If I'm not mistaken, there's definitely an extremely great surprise waiting for us behind this spatial rift. You know as well that the divine senses of titled emperors are very sharp, and they rarely make mistakes." "You speak as if I'm not an emperor-level warrior." The primordial porcupine rolled its eyes and muttered. Then, it raised its head and let out a long howl, a woo. As the howl resounded, the countless subordinates of the beasts that had retreated because the battle was coming to an end and left the central area empty for the 4 emperor-level beasts to battle. All of a sudden, they swarmed over like waves. Soon, an army of nearly 50 million ferocious beasts was assembled. Under the command of the primordial porcupine and the primordial tortoise, they rushed toward the void crack that had unexpectedly appeared in front of them. Half a day later, the entire army of beasts was completely gone. This incomparably vast but damaged prison star field fell into silence and was almost completely empty. It was also a plane of the first universe, but it wasn't the main plane of the first universe. Instead, it was connected to an independent space like a black hole. This was the secret ancestral land of the demon race in the first universe. Since the demon dweller star area had changed, the demon emperor star area had disappeared completely and was replaced by the desolate ancient cage star area. The entire demon dweller race had been moved to this place by the second primordial ancestor. In this mysterious ancestral land. Just like the sealing race, they never appeared in the outside world again. All of this happened more than 10 years ago. In the blink of an eye, more than 6,000 days and nights had passed. In more than 10 years, the second-generation ancestor of the demon race had already broken through the marquis level and was now a king-level martial artist. At this moment, he was standing on a star in the center of the black hole. Around the star, there were castles and fortresses of various sizes. There were very few star-level battleships that were more than 3,000 meters long. The entire battleship army was more than 100 million strong. In addition to the entire demon race's martial artists, there were also some martial artists from other races that were subordinate to the demon race. On the star, beside the second-generation ancestor of the demon race, the first-generation demon emperor Mo Dietian, the current-generation demon emperor Mo Wendian, the demon race's royal uncle, and the others could all be seen. After more than 10 years of secluded cultivation, everyone's cultivation had improved greatly. Shocking. After all, the great wilderness world could descend on the present world at any time. For any starry sky powerhouse who wanted to live and did not want to fall in the great calamity, they would definitely take advantage of the time before the calamity arrived to improve their cultivation as quickly as possible. Force. Now, even the current generation demon emperor Mo Wintian's cultivation strength had reached the late immortal realm. As for the demon race's royal uncle and the first generation demon emperor Mo Dietian, they had all been conferred the title of Marquis. Among them, one could actually see the figure of the demon emperor guard commander Chanas. This guy had long been possessed by Wen Xing originally. He wanted to use this method to get close to Yi Xian, but he didn't find the opportunity. Later on, he hibernated among the demon race. Now, he actually had the cultivation of an ordinary immortal realm. However, no one knew whether the ordinary immortal realm he displayed on the surface was his true cultivation level or a hidden cultivation level to match the identity of Chanas. In the distance opposite the star where the upper echelons of the demon race were standing, there was another star, and it was even bigger. At this moment, all the upper echelons of the demon race, including the second-generation ancestor of the demon race, had their eyes fixed on this bigger star. On the star. Everyone's expression faintly revealed a hint of nervousness, as if they were waiting for something, with a sense of apprehension and fear of loss. Boom. Rumble. Suddenly, an earth-shattering sound came, followed by the continuous sound of thunder. The huge star that the upper echelons of the demon race had their eyes fixed on suddenly shook violently. Seeing this scene, everyone, including the second-generation ancestor of the demon race, had their hearts in their throats. They subconsciously held their breaths, anxiously waiting. Very quickly, as the shaking of this star became more and more intense, the entire star suddenly split into two from the middle. A large amount of shattered boulders were swept up by an invisible force that was so cold that it made one's hair stand on end, and shot out in all directions. Without waiting for the commotion to settle, a figure walked out from the cracked star, and just like that, he walked in the void. This was a middle-aged man, dressed in a blood-red robe, with a dignified bearing, and his face was somewhat similar to the second-generation ancestor of the Devil Dweller. If there were no surprises, this person should be the first-generation ancestor of the demon race. He was the direct descendant of the mysterious demon race ancestor, the same generation as the original body of Mad Mosquito Emperor and Mosquito Butcher Old Devil. According to the second-generation ancestor of the demon race, when this first-generation ancestor of the demon race was in seclusion, his cultivation level was already at the pinnacle of the 9th level. Once he came out of seclusion, he would at least be able to break through to the emperor level. Chapter 4363. Welcome back, Ancestor. Seeing this middle-aged man in blood-red robes with a dignified bearing walk out from the star, the aura of his cultivation was so powerful that it was shocking. Countless demon experts in space trembled with excitement. They were filled with deep shock. They were so happy that they cupped their fists and knelt down on one knee. Even the higher-ups of the demon race, including the second ancestor of the demon race, did the same. Chanas, the commander of the demon emperor guards who had been possessed by Wen Xing Old Ghost, also got down on one knee. Just now, when he saw the first-generation ancestor descendant of the demon race and sensed that the aura emanating from his body had reached the universe night level, he was shocked. A look of surprise clearly appeared on his face, but it disappeared in a flash and he quickly calmed down. It seemed that although he was surprised, he was not too shocked. From this, it could be inferred that the true level of this old man was not that simple. So much time has passed. Luckily, I, Mo Feng Tian, have finally become a universe knight. In the distance, the first-generation ancestor of the demon dwellers stood in the void millions of miles away from the star. He turned his head and looked around, frowning slightly. So many people with ordinary cultivation. Could it be that the demon dwellers have sealed off their race? There is an irresistible huge change. A huge change? Xiao. Before he could finish his sentence, a blood-red ray shot out from between his eyebrows and landed on the body of a demon. In an instant, Mo Fengtian's eyes flashed with understanding and a cold light flashed in them. The great desolate world is about to descend? So, it's time to use the jade token that the primordial ancestor left behind. As he spoke, he flipped his hand, and a bloody jade token half the size of his palm appeared in his hand. It was simple and unadorned, and it faintly emitted an obscure and ancient primordial law force. Seeing this blood-colored jade tablet, the eyes of Chanas, the commander of the demon royal guards, who had already stood up with the higher-ups of the demons, flashed once again. Even his eyebrows twitched slightly, but it was quickly concealed. It was very obvious that this jade tablet revealed an ancient aura. He seemed to be quite interested in this bloody jade token with the law force. Gather all of our people, and bring all of our reserve powers and resources. In 3 days, we'll move out of this ancient ancestral land. We won't be coming back. Mo Feng Tian lowered his head and played with the bloody jade token in his hand. His voice was like a whisper coming from his mouth. All the great beings of the demon race were shocked when they heard this. This news was too shocking. No one would have thought that just as the first generation of descendants was born, the entire demon race would immediately abandon their ancestral land and head to the unknown. However, although they were shocked, no one asked anything. The upper echelons of the demon race immediately moved, mobilizing all of the demon race experts in the black hole to prepare for the departure of the demon race in 3 days. 3 days later, all the preparations were in place. The resources that the devil cultivator race had left behind in this black hole had all been taken away. All the devil cultivator experts had also entered this battle that was over 100 million strong. Within the fleet, as long as the order was given, they would be able to set sail. Xiao. Without saying a word, the first ancestor of the demon race, Mo Feng Tian, crushed the bloody jade token in his hand. With a clear cracking sound, the jade token turned into a bloody light and shot forward with a sharp sound. In the void space. Selah. A shocking scene appeared. As the bloody light shot forward, the dark black hole space was torn open, revealing a huge crack in the void space. Behind the crack, there was a strong aura of the Hong Meng void space. It was the boundless dark world where Yi Xian was now. Such a small bloody light had such terrifying power. The existence that left it behind was at least at the level of a universe master. Chanas, the commander of the demon royal guards, said, "The space behind the rift is where the primordial ancestor is." When the primordial ancestor left, he left behind this blood pendant. He said that when the primordial world is about to descend, we can crush the blood pendant and use it to guide our people to it. Reunite with him. As he spoke, Mo Feng Tian pointed a finger in front of him and shouted, "Listen up, all my sons and daughters. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Hong. Hong long long." With Mo Feng Tian's order, the hundreds of millions of battleships that were ready to go all opened their kinetic energy cabins. The loud rumbling continued as all the battleships moved together and rushed toward the crack in the void space that was torn open by the bloody jade token. In just a few hours, all the battleships entered the crack in the void space and disappeared. This ancient ancestral land of the demon race became an empty nest, just as the demon race abandoned their nest and entered the Hong Meng void space. In a mysterious void space that was connected to the first universe by a secret passage, there was an army of battleships that was many times larger than the hundreds of millions of battleships of the demon race. At this moment, he was also fully unleashing his kinetic energy, launching bombardment after bombardment towards a blood-colored obscure light curtain that was like a membrane. This army of battleships belonged to the Celestial Legacy race. This void space that was connected to the first universe by a secret passage was the mysterious void space that the Celestial Legacy race had entered when they first migrated. This mysterious void was the same as the core of the source of all evil that Yi Xian had first discovered. There were a large number of corpses of powerful primordial era creatures in the void. Among them, there was no lack of quasi-primordial era experts and true primordial era experts. The reason why De, the patriarch of the Celestial Legacy race, had decided to take advantage of the changes in the Celestial Legacy city at the time to move the entire city and the entire Celestial Legacy race to this mysterious void space was to take advantage of the powerful desolates that could be found everywhere in this void space. The corpses of primordial beings allowed the entire Celestial Legacy race to complete a magnificent transformation and evolution in a short period of time. Now, it had been almost 20 years since all of this had started. A lot of things could happen in 20 years. The Celestial Legacy race had used the strength of the entire race and countless intelligent robots to work tirelessly. The overall transformation and evolution of the Celestial Legacy race had already achieved astounding results. Back then, the Celestial Legacy city was only the size of a small planet. However, after 20 years of overall and comprehensive upgrades, the size of the Celestial Legacy city had even surpassed some extremely rare giant planets. It had become a true star fortress. Chapter 43-64. Back then, the Tianji city that was built from the toughest new universe alloy had two forms, the regular continent form and the wartime fortress form. Now, everything had been fully consolidated and upgraded. The Tianji city of today was completely different from before. The current Tianji city was no longer purely built from the latest universe alloy. In the past 20 years, De had used all the power of the Tianji clan to collect all the treasured bodies of countless powerful primordial creatures in this void. All kinds of top-grade flesh and blood materials. For example, the dragon tendons of the true dragon, the phoenix marrow of the fire phoenix, and the dragon spine of the black dragon, and so on. These primordial creatures were extremely powerful when they were alive. Even though they had been dead for countless years, their treasured bodies were still very powerful. However, the Tianji clan had ways to cut them up and use all kinds of suitable materials to transform the originally cold and pure universe alloy into a pure universe alloy. Step by step, they transformed the Tianji city into a biochemical fortress that was made from the combination of universe alloy and primordial creatures' flesh and blood. Not only that. Even its original two forms had doubled in number, reaching a total of 4 forms. In addition to the original regular continent form and the wartime spherical fortress form, the current Tianji city had 2 other simulated forms. As long as De gave the order, the entire enormous Tianji city, which contained a terrifying amount of combat power, could transform into a gigantic demonic dragon or a black phoenix with a shocking wingspan in a short period of time. Apart from the Tianji city, all the official members of the Tianji clan, including the clan leader De, had been improving their cultivation at a rapid pace in the past 20 years. Not only did they use the countless primordial creatures' flesh and blood to improve their cultivation, but they also collected top-grade materials like dragon tendons and phoenix marrow to transform their own mechanical bodies step by step, just like how they transformed the Tianji city. Some powerful members of the Tianji clan even gave up on their human bodies. They directly used the bones or treasured bodies of huge primordial creatures as the foundation, carefully sculpting them step by step from the inside out. Finally, electronic consciousness entered these primordial creatures from the primordial era. The combination of the remains of the primordial creatures and the power of modern science and technology created a new giant body. It was like a complete rebirth. With a shake of its body, it became a powerful primordial creature with the addition of science and technology elements. De, the leader, had several such bodies made from powerful primordial creatures, and one of them emitted an aura that had reached the level of a quasi-primordial great being. Even universe supreme beings were no match for it. As for where De's original body was, what form it was, and what level it had reached, none of the members of the Tianji clan knew. In addition to the transformation and evolution of the official members of the clan, in the past 20 years, the Tianji clan had also used the primordial creatures' remains from the primordial creatures to create a large number of non-human intelligent robots. Basically, all of them were based on the original appearance of these primordial life form corpses, and then processed with various methods to create them. This type of existence is increasing in number, and their combat strength is also extremely shocking. Unlike the traditional human-shaped AI androids of the past, although these fellows are not born from my electronic consciousness, they are actually AI androids. However, the official members of the Tianji clan called them automaton battle beasts. By now, the number of automaton battle beasts that the Tianji clan had created had reached 1 million. Although they were actually created from the remains of primordial creatures, remains with the addition of science and technology elements, such as the scales on the surface of their bodies and the skin on their skin. Their skin was the latest biochemical product. However, it had to be said that the Tianji clan had an unparalleled talent and advantage in terms of mimicry materials and manufacturing. This army of automaton battle beasts, which had reached 1 million in number, did not look like a product of machinery or flesh at first glance. It was as if they were a real army of primordial creatures. In addition to all of the above, the Tianji clan had been following up on another major event in the past few years, and that was the scene that was unfolding before their eyes. An army of at least 100 billion battleships of various types was pointing all of the battleships' cannons toward the primordial creatures. The muzzles of the cannons were all pointed at the end of this mysterious void. Not long after, under the order of a certain higher-up, the trillions of cannons rumbled and fired in unison. However, all the cannons of this army of 100 billion battleships were bombarding the very end of this mysterious space, the blood-colored membrane that was like the canopy of the sky. This blood-colored membrane seemed unremarkable, but the Tianji clan's army of 100 billion battleships had been bombarding it non-stop for more than 2 years without being able to break through it completely. 2 years ago, when this blood-colored membrane had just been discovered, the Tianji clan's patriarch, De, had even personally come here and brought several newly refined primordial creature avatars with him to attack it together, but to no avail. No one knew what was on the other side of this blood-colored membrane, but one thing was for sure: this blood-colored membrane at the edge of the membrane possessed such terrifying defensive capabilities. Thus, if they could break through it, they would be able to enter the other side of the membrane. The world on the other side of the membrane was bound to be far richer in resources than this mysterious space in front of them. For the sake of this goal, Patriarch De had issued a death order. No matter what, no matter the price, no matter how long it took, this blood-colored membrane had to be broken. Buzz, boom, rumble. As another order was issued, the entire boundless void instantly began to hum like a tide. This was the sound of the cannons of the 100 billion battleships charging at the same time. Then, with a massive roar, the cannons of the 100 billion battleships fired at the same time. Countless energy light pillars of different diameters shot forward from different angles. Finally, they gathered together, forming a terrifying energy light pillar with a wide diameter. In the blink of an eye, it fell across the void in front of them. It was as if the space in front of them had been filled with energy. On the blood-colored membrane that was like the canopy of the sky. This time, the blood-colored membrane that had never been broken through began to sway more intensely than before when the energy beams of the giant battleships bombarded it. Although the degree of increase was not very great, this situation at least showed that with each bombardment, the terrifying defensive power of this blood-colored membrane was slowly but steadily decreasing and weakening.